This meeting is this meeting You look to be there? Is Bill there?
I'm trying to get it there.
Okay.
He said he would give us the, he would let us, so, yeah.
Okay. Oh, we can still go without him though, right? All right, let's go then. You ready? Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of the Plan Commission on Monday, March 10th at 6:30 PM in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom, and also can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all plan commissioners present, except for Mr. Shadid, who is joining us via WebEx tonight.
And I am present on WebEx.
So then we will go to approval of minutes, which is the next item on the agenda from the February 10th, 2025 Plan Commission meeting.
Move approval is presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? Okay, Mr. Williams is abstaining. And Ms. Hank. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. That then takes us to new business, starting with new business item A. Chair recognizes trustee Baum.
So I'd like to make a motion that we go out of order and take item D first. That is going to be a quick item. I'd like to get this gentleman through and out before he has to listen.
All right, motion made to take item, to take out of order, starting with item D, yes?
I think somebody at the dais might have their volume on or their microphone on their laptop. We're getting some feedback.
Okay. Anybody have their volume on their microphone, or does Mr. Shadid have his on?
Somebody
And
ever check the computer?
I'm off. I wasn't on. All right, so we have a motion, and do we have a second? Motion made and seconded to start with item D. Any discussion on that motion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Then we'll start with new business. Item D, Lemberg Electric, Agent for Green Bay Packaging, Inc., property owner located at North 128 West 21600 Holy Hill Road. Sign application review on tonight's agenda for action. Give us more information, background on this new business item. We'll turn the meeting over to our associate planner, Jordan Yankee.
All right, thanks, Mr. President. Good evening. So as you mentioned, this sign application review for Green Bay Packaging submitted by Lemberg Electric. The site location here is their new facility off of Holy Hill Road. Does front or face I-41, which is to the west of the site. Here's the site location prior to the building being constructed. And as you saw in the packet, the predominant sign in this package is a wall sign, which would be on the western facade facing I-41, which is their primary entrance. Then there was a number of wayfinding and variety of different directional signs that you see in the packet. I have them listed on the slides. I won't go through each one, but in the packet, there's a key map with the details for each of the directional signs. Some images here. Here's their channel letter proposal for their primary wall sign, as I mentioned, facing I-41 above the building entrance. Some other images here, pretty standard wall mounted directional signs and also channel letter directional signs. And then here you'll notice some shipping dock numbers and wayfinding banners. Key map, which was included in the site showing the locations, cross-referenced with the sign numbers. And then just included some building renderings so you can see how the building as it's being constructed as it was approved in 2024 with that layout on that site. So with that, the signs do comply with village code for square footage measurements and compliance with those stipulations. And also the code does allow the plan commission to approve wall wayfinding and wall signage on any facade of the building when deemed appropriate. The condition that staff is recommending is a pretty common standard for an electrical permit to be required prior to the sign installation for the wall sign. So as I mentioned, the recommendation is to approve as submitted with that condition for the electrical permit. Can take any questions.
All right. Commissioners,
Make a motion to approve the proposed sign package as presented with the one condition.
Second.
motion made and seconded by Mr. Shattuck. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. That then takes us to new business item A. Village of Germantown Community Development Department and Village Attorney proposed text amendments to Section 17 for zoning of the Village of Germantown Municipal Code on tonight's agenda for public hearing and action. To give us more information and background on this new business item, we'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As indicated in the various statements in the draft ordinance, the proposed amendments are necessary to maintain consistency between our zoning code and Wisconsin statutes. The basis for these changes come from 2023 Wisconsin Act 16 that adopted some specific preemptions or limitations on how municipalities exercise their zoning authority. In this case, many of those provisions in 2023 Act 16 had a delayed effective date of January 1, 2025, and thus the need to make those changes now. These changes are recommended by both staff and the village attorney. And I would point out that we do have a separate opinion that we received from the village attorney in response to some specific concerns that have been raised since the packet was posted on Friday. A copy was left on your desk, your dais this evening, so we can get into those details as necessary at the conclusion of the presentation and before the public hearing. Specifically, we have 5 amendments. Amendment number 1. This amendment to Section 17.27 removes a provision that previously required a favorable vote of 3/4 of the full village board to increase the maximum density allowed in a planned development district. As mentioned, 2023 Act 16 creates Wisconsin Statute Section 66(1)0015 to limit municipal zoning authority to only require a favorable vote of a simple majority to enact a zoning amendment. And in this case, that would include the creation or amendment of a planned development district. This particular amendment means a simple majority of a quorum of the village board is required to enact that zoning amendment. Amendment number 2, similarly, removes a provision that provided for a protest petition against the zoning amendment. If the specific criteria were met in that previous protest petition, a valid petition required a favorable vote of 3/4 of the full village board to approve a zoning amendment subject of that petition. Similar to the First Amendment, Act 2023-16 creates Section 66(1)0015 that limits municipal zoning authority to only require a favorable vote of a simple majority to enact a proposed zoning amendment. It eliminates that protest petition provision that was in the zoning code. I would point out that this is an issue that came up once before, a number of years ago. I think a few of you probably remember back in soon after 2017, the village considered an amendment to this particular provision, the protest petition provision in the zoning code, as a result of 2017 Act 243 that was repealed the 3/4 vote protest petition requirement from the Wisconsin statutes. At that time, the village attorney advised the village that they needed to take that petition requirement or allowance out of the code. There was a lot of discussion. There was some, let's call it confusion on the part of municipalities around the state, including the village for that matter, that didn't know whether or not that amendment or act provision that removed that protest petition allowance was optional or whether it was mandatory. And so like Germantown, many municipalities kept their protest petition provision in their code since that time back in 2017. As the village attorney points out in his opinion, that it seems that the development lobbyists were successful in my term, putting a stake in that protest petition allowance in the statute and specifically adopted the current language in 2023 Act 16 that makes it clear that a simple majority of the a quorum of the village board is necessary to enact a zoning amendment or a zoning change. And thus the protest petition provision is being eliminated from the code. Amendment number 3 creates a section 17.42 to provide for, and I always get tripped up on this word, a certiorari appeal process in circuit court with respect to the denial of a conditional use permit, where said process is specified under a new section also being created, 17.52 of our zoning code, that is consistent with section 781.10 of the Wisconsin statutes. Amendment number 4 clarifies that a zoning amendment requires a favorable vote of a simple majority of a quorum of the village board, except if the amendment constitutes a downzoning of property. Again, similar to amendments 1 and 2, we get back to the same 2023 Act 16 provision, that being the creation of Wisconsin Statute 66.10015, that again limits the municipal zoning authority to only require a favorable vote of a simple majority to enact a zoning amendment. In this case, that only applies or doesn't apply if the amendment constitutes a downzoning of a property. And that generally is defined as either a zoning amendment or ordinance that would decrease the development density of a property from what it was previously allowed, or reduces the permitted uses on a particular property from what it previously was. In which case, that downzoning ordinance would continue to require a 2/3 majority vote of the village board. Otherwise, as we've discussed, other zoning amendments would simply require that simple majority of a quorum of the village board to enact that zoning change. And finally, amendment number 5 is the creation of section 17.52 sub 8, or the recreation of it, to provide for that appeal process in the circuit court for anybody aggrieved by a decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The certiorari action, it's generally a legal action which provides for the review of a decision by a lower court or a governmental agency such as the village by a higher court. And there are specific rules, but generally that decision is based on a review of the record and is an attempt to determine whether or not the municipality's decision was within its jurisdiction, whether the municipality acted according to law, whether the municipality's decision was arbitrary or oppressive, and whether the evidence of the record substantiates the municipality's decision. So in this case, as I asked the village attorney, so what does this mean for us? He basically said that going forward, if there is an appeal of a village board or a board of zoning appeal decision concerning a zoning amendment, that appeal would be handled by the circuit court and not by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So with that, there are five amendments that I've summarized, and they're included in the draft ordinance that you have before you. I guess at this point, I'll just respond to any questions that you might have.
To get it started, I'll make a motion to,
We got a public hearing first. Do
public hearing. Okay.
you have any questions?
Nope.
Anyone else have any questions?
Just don't ask me to pronounce the certiorari.
Yeah, I got one question before we start.
Trustee Baum?
So is there any opportunity for a petition? Or is this wipe out petitions altogether? for
No,
any-
as indicated in the attorney's opinion, it doesn't eliminate property owners, residents filing a petition. It just eliminates the requirement for a three-quarter majority or supermajority vote if that petition and the petitioners satisfy what was a short list of criteria under the previous code provision.
Okay, so you could still do a petition.
Still do a petition.
Okay.
It just won't have the same effect in terms of mandating or requiring that supermajority vote.
Mr. Ewert.
Just a quick question on the state statute. Is it written in language, and I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to read the entire statute, that states we cannot be more restrictive than what the statute is stating when it comes to zoning and or less restrictive?
The words, those exact words aren't in the statute, but when asked, the village attorney provided in his statement on page 2, and I'm just going to read what he wrote. In short, this change requires that all zoning amendments be approved by a simple majority vote of the governing body and therefore eliminates any authority for local municipalities to require a supermajority vote for zoning changes. And he's referring to Act 16 and the provision that created that new section. Under Wisconsin law, where the legislator provides general authority, a municipality can be more stringent than general terms provided by statute. However, where the legislature has expressly provided a requirement, as in this case, the village cannot be more stringent than what the statute requires.
So it's specifically outlined we cannot. If we want to say we want to retain that three-quarter majority, we couldn't. And or if we wanted to retain the down zoning version of that, we couldn't as well. That's what the attorney
By
said.
statute, the down zoning provision does stay. It's just everything else that's not a down zoning ordinance, requires
Stays
now
the
that,
three-quarter, correct? Down zoning.
it's 2/3.
Or sorry, 2/3.
Yeah.
My apologies. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Mr. Shadid.
Yes, so with the ruling from the state, does that mean that our statute is null and void? Why do we have to have this, why do we have to have this vote?
Well, we just need to eliminate it from our books. I think in part, one of the primary reasons would be not to lead people to believe that there's opportunity for them to file a protest petition, to go through the necessary process of gathering signatures that qualify under the criteria that are listed in the code, only to get to deliver it to the clerk's office and the village turn around and say, hey, I'm sorry, even though this provision is on our books, Wisconsin statute says it doesn't apply. So why should we keep it on our books in any event? So that's the reason why we need to get it out.
I guess I don't agree with, I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but it seems like the timing is a little bit off. I guess, I don't know, let's wait for the public hearing. Let's hear what people have to say, and then I might come back and talk more about it, okay?
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Anything else, Jeff?
No, not at this point.
All right, then we can hereby open this public hearing by hereby stating, a notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the Village of Germantown Plan Commission at the Germantown Village Hall located on Mequon Road in Germantown and also virtually through the WebEx platform on Monday, March 10th at 6:30 PM or later. The purpose of said hearing will be to hear any and all parties, their attorneys or agents, for or against the petition filed by the Village of Germantown Community Development Department for proposed text amendments to Section 17 zoning of the Village of Germantown Municipal Code. And citizens wishing to submit any public comments should do so by sending them to the following email, which I did receive 2 comments in regards to this public hearing. And the first one says, to the Plan Commission regarding the changing in zoning amendments. While I hear that you want to change the zoning ordinance to be consistent with the Wisconsin ordinances, the Village of Germantown's Plan Commission is very small. Making that change will mean that the difference of 1 vote, what would have been 5 votes under the current ordinance, will now only need 4 as a majority vote to make the changes to zoning. I don't think it should be amended. West Bend has 9 people on the commission, and Mequon, who you seem to compare us to frequently, has 8. These numbers play out differently if they would adopt the new Wisconsin ordinances. The change in the ordinance will give the ability for just a few members of the Plan Commission to change the zoning. Let's keep the Village of Germantown a community-based area, not one dictated by the desires of a few commissioners that don't seem to follow wants, desires, and concerns of the residents. I'm asking the Plan Commission to vote no to the amendment. Thank you. And that's from Tammy Schneider on Lannon Road. The other email that we had received says, Plan Commission members, I understand there is to be a vote tonight on whether to allow zoning requests to pass with simple majority vote rather than the 3/4 supermajority. To me, reducing the zoning vote to a simple majority would be a mistake, since 4 to 7 support is much easier to attain than 6-7. This opens the door to passing an unpopular vote. Should a future issue come to the commission that has only middling support, it would be easier to pass this issue with the replacement of 1 commissioner. This would be relatively easy to do if an unscrupulous entity, business owner or otherwise, was able to buy the influence of a prospective commissioner. However, it is much harder to accomplish this if a supermajority vote is required. Since zoning change can have a great major effect on the stability of a business or home and is not easily reversed, this should be guarded against at all costs. Please vote to maintain the 3/4 majority. Apologies that I could not be present tonight to give a more eloquent explanation of my position, and that comes from Scott Schrader. Those are the 2 that we had received in regards to tonight's public hearing. If there is anyone that is joining us either within our audience or on WebEx that would like to speak for or against the amendments to the ordinances as proposed, you're welcome to do so at this time. All I would ask is you do fill out a yellow slip with your name and address so that the recording secretary can get your name and address correct, and come to the podium in the middle of the room and state your name and address for the record as well, so that those listening at home and within our audience can recognize who you are. Is there anyone wishing to come forward to speak for or against the zoning code amendments? There you go.
Okay. I think there should be a better explanation. I think all this legal stuff, it's very confusing for most people, and I've heard comments about, "Hey, what are they talking about?" Could somebody explain in just basic language, if somebody in a neighborhood is very upset with what's being done, and they want to file a petition, could you explain very simply what both the current petition allows and if the other one is adopted, so people can understand it in their own mind? Anybody here like another explanation?
Planner Retzlaff?
Ashley says that they kind of eliminated it, but you can still file.
Well, somebody, yeah, so everybody's thinking the same thing. They like a simpler.
Planner Retzlaff, can you explain again what the difference is between the state statute and what it changed in regards to our ordinance?
Unlike the current provision in the zoning code that allows for a protest petition to be filed concerning a zoning amendment, which be a text amendment or a district change to a particular property, a zoning change to a property, this new provision would eliminate the impact of that protest petition on the number of members necessary to vote in favor of it. Under the old provision, with a valid protest petition, a favorable vote of 3/4 of the full village board would be required in order to pass a zoning change. As a result of the Wisconsin statute provision, that protest petition provision is eliminated. That does not mean you can't file a protest petition. It simply means that a protest petition that's filed doesn't have the same effect of requiring that there be a supermajority vote of the village board in order to pass that zoning change. It would be a simple majority is all that would be necessary in order to pass a zoning change
Or conditional use permit or anything.
or a conditional use permit or a planned development district.
Just so everybody in the room understands, the Plan Commission does not vote on this. We make a recommendation to the village board, and the village board will vote on this. So this body would then consider it, discuss it, and then put it forward with either a positive recommendation or a negative recommendation to the village board, and then it would be brought forward to possibly the next village board meeting, Planner Retzloff,
Yes.
for the village board to consider and vote on. And what, as Planner Retzloff has discussed, normally when someone would bring forward a protest petition, one that was from property owners that were either surrounding or in close proximity to the property that was being rezoned, if it was a proper petition, that it would require a supermajority of the village board to approve that zoning change or conditional use permit in order for it to be approved. Now with the state coming in, and once again, I feel is an overreach and telling us how we should be running our village and our municipalities, they've changed their state statute to say that it doesn't require a supermajority. It only requires a regular majority. So it can go on a 5-4, or it can go on a 4-3. It doesn't require that 3/4 anymore, and that is a state statute. That is not ours. So we're just making our ordinance match the current state statute that was changed by the state legislature. So that's all we're doing here. What was eliminated was the power of the protest petition of demanding that 3/4 of the board vote in favor in order for the change to go through. That state statute removes that requirement and now goes with a simple majority. Any other, within our audience that'd like to come forward as part of the public hearing to speak for or against the text amendments?
Good evening, Sarah Larson, Butternut Road. I want to preface the comments with, to the community members who are part of this commission. You often end up getting feedback that necessarily comes across harsh, and it really isn't directed at you. It's more the board members that are on the commission, and there's so little opportunity for the citizens to be heard that a lot of overflow ends up happening. So just kind of, I know it can be discouraging when you hear a lot of other things. Regarding the zoning amendments, I think that technically this should be tabled. The packet was not posted until 2 p.m. Friday. And then today, or I'm sorry, actually 3:19 p.m. on Friday. And then this afternoon, it was further amended at 2 p.m. So less than one business day, if the community wanted to consult legal to dive into this a little bit more as to whether we could go more restrictive as opposed to least restrictive on this. I think there's a whole lot of underlying things going on here, and probably the timing of this is strategic, although I should probably put away my tinfoil hat. But this whole deal with the key of January 1st, if you've been following the Facebook posts of how development is getting pushed through in Germantown, you'll find that our plan director says it's going to be very tricky to get the planned development district passed for the zoning change. And so this will very easily allow them to walk through the changes for the zoning that they need to make the village center happen and the Blackstone Creek development happen. And so I think it's kind of funny when the plan director says this is just necessary to maintain consistency. Why should the citizens be required to take legal action of taking something to circuit court? Why not stick with the greater restrictive and let a developer take us to court? You know, maybe we'll roll over, but maybe not. And who knows, by then, maybe the law will have changed. So I ask that you table this, because also the village board currently does not have both trustees for District 4. And so as a citizen in District 4, I don't want that vote happening until I'm fully represented. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to come forward to speak for or against the text amendments to the ordinances?
Okay, Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane. Good evening, everyone. So I took a look at the Act 16 language, and it doesn't say anything about removing petitions in that actual act. I do think that having the ability to petition the government, any government, is a First Amendment right, and I'm glad that it doesn't prevent people from doing it. But if you're going to just, I think you should leave it in there so that people can know that they can, if there's a bad zoning matter on that's about to be discussed, that there is that option. Perhaps it just needs to be tweaked differently. If the village were to limit residents in removing the petition option, it would be not a good look. I think that Act 16 is bad legislation at the state level. It too much favors developers. And I'm glad to hear that you believe that too, President Walter. It also contradicts, if you were to go for this, you would also be contradicting the stance on the solar farm. And we should have fought that. From my understanding, there's legislation going through that addresses the solar farm and potentially addresses this as well. So these efforts to face high density or to force high density housing on suburban areas goes back to 2015 and 2016 and the Obama era. You can look it up. This is when the Democrats were trying to change up a number of suburban and urban areas and essentially make people have high density, next generation housing, whatever it is you want to call it. Since the commissioners haven't had a chance to read everything, I think this should be delayed so that it can be studied further. I also think that there should be no vote at the village board until after the 1st of April election. And then the last comment is that I think that the developers who are here for the other two agenda items should stick around for public comments before going off to Bubs. Thanks.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time to speak for or against the ordinances? I'm sorry, yeah, the change in the ordinance and the text amendment changes?
Good evening, Scott Heffley, Old Farm Road, just right down the road. A lot has been said, I totally agree with. I have a call into the Legislative Bureau at the state, and there, to my knowledge, after reading the statute, there is not like a statute of limitations. You must do this within a set period of time. It doesn't have to be done by 2025. They're asking the villages to act on it. There is no date that you have to have it done by. Why would I say that? Because it's curious about the timing of this, okay? We have, and I see you smirking, President Walter.
I'm not
but
smirking.
there is a, but don't interrupt. There is a election in District 4. District 4 is underrepresented. There is a challenge election for village board president. And here we are trying to ram everything through, in my opinion, as quickly as we can to do what? Well, it's time sensitive. We have to buy properties. Well, this is time sensitive. Why are we in a rush to take the 2050 plan and get it done in 3 or 4 years? Okay? You know what a majority taking that away does? 5 is a quorum, right, President Walter? 5 is a quorum on the village board, correct? Okay, so you only need 3 people out of 9 to vote to transformatively change this village. Is that a good representation? Is that a good deal? And I understand the state is going to mandate certain things, but there is no time frame in the statute. I read it 3 times. I'm not an attorney, but I know how to read. That says we have to do it tonight. We have to do it next week. It says that they want the change, but they did not put a date on it. I'm waiting to hear back from the Legislative Bureau, which is a legit government entity. They provide legal advice to the legislature. They are not a joke, okay? I will get an answer back from them. They said they get back to me tomorrow. So there is no reason for this to be rushed forward other than a bunch of people, developers, this is a developer's bill, that they want to get their development done before we figure out what's really going on. So I would say this is take more time, especially when I hear that there was additional information sent out today. I didn't even see that because I was working. Additional information the last second. How is that fair to you people sitting on the board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time to speak for or against the text amendments to the ordinance? Anyone else wishing to come forward to speak for or against?
Hello, my name is Scott Lopez. I live at W204 and 10005 Lannon Road. I'm speaking out against the Planning Commission's rule change to allow a simple majority to change zoning ordinances. Such a change is fundamental to the Commission's power and as such should require approval from the Germantown citizens and not self-approval by the Commission itself. The timing of this proposal, right before a zone change request from developers behind the proposed Lannon Gateway neighborhood, simply stinks of corruption. If the Planning Commission has the votes to make the zone change, the rule would simply be left in place. Clearly, there is some dissent that could derail the zone change, or a majority vote proposal would not be before us, not at this time to rush it through in the dead of night with minimal oversight. I urge all Germantown residents to spread the word about this change, raise their concerns, and speak out against a fundamental change that affects all residents of Germantown. In addition, I urge residents to contact their representatives, as well as the Attorney General's office and local media to help get this important information out to the public. If the Planning Commission wants this change, then it should be put into a referendum for public approval. The Commission should remember that they are here to represent the residents of Germantown and not the special interests of billion-dollar developers. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time to speak for or against the text changes to the ordinance? Anyone else?
Tammy Schneider, West 204, North 9699 Lannon Road. I did submit my comments and you've already read them, but after listening to the presentations, I would like to talk further about those. I also looked up Act 16 and did a search in that act and for protest petition, and nothing came up. There was no word in there that said protest petition, which leads me to believe it is being eliminated. I don't think this matter can be voted on until the village writes clear amendments that include that or disclude it entirely. Many citizens of Germantown have shown up at meetings expressing dislikes, concerns with proposed developments, yet the village continues to move forward on these. Your own residents' survey of 2019 states, and I quote, 75% of respondents agree to single-family residents with detached garage. Additionally, 71% disagree with multifamily housing, but yet the 2050 comprehensive plan goes against all of that and includes it, particularly in the area of the Lannon Gateway neighborhood, saying that the multifamily housing is desirable. I don't believe that the village commission or village board is listening to what the residents want. Looking at the survey and looking at the comprehensive plan, I think it is a clear indication that they don't listen. So I believe that the protest petition might be the only way that citizens can get through the last ditch effort to not have these gigantic proposed developments come in. Therefore, I say you either wait or vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time to speak for or against the text amendments to the ordinance? Anyone online? Anyone else wishing to come forward? If there is no one else, this public hearing is now closed. Commissioners.
Make a motion to approve the recommendation for the Plan Commission to move the proposed zoning amendment to the village board for consideration and action as presented.
Motion made and seconded. discussion?
I have a point I'd like to make, please.
So Mr. Shadid?
Okay.
Go ahead, Bill.
I think we need some clarification here. I don't think, generally speaking, people understand this is not about a change in the voting on the plan commission. The plan commission is being asked to pass a ruling of recommendation to the board, and it's the board, the village board, who's changing their majority vote, correct?
That's correct, Bill.
Okay, well, I really think there's a misunderstanding there. Also, I guess I take a leaf or a page out of something you said when we were dealing with the solar farm. I think it was mentioned a little bit ago. That just because the state mandates something doesn't mean we have to capitulate and do it. I really am not in favor of this change. And I'm very definitely not in favor of this change as close to an election. I'm also in District 4. We're not completely represented. It's a more contentious election than I've seen in some time since I've lived here. That's not a bad thing. It's just. I would think that it would be good to put this on hold until after the election, and then whoever's changed or whoever's on the board, whoever's on the plan commission is settled. Then bring it back up. But I can't vote for it the way it is now and the time we're doing it. That's it.
Further discussion? Thank you, Bill. Further discussion? Ms. Hank?
If we were to vote on this today as plan commission, could it be postponed for village board approval until the full board is present?
If the board so chose that, at the next village board meeting, yes, absolutely. It
So that
either-
would be a village board decision?
Right, either way tonight, if we go forward with, a positive recommendation, a negative recommendation, or no recommendation, it will be on the next village board meeting agenda. And then the village board at that time can decide if they want to vote on it, or if they want to postpone it, or if they want to table it, for all the purposes that have been stated tonight. We are just a recommending body, that suggest one way or another based on the information we presented of how we would like, we'd either be a favorable vote or a non-favorable vote. So it's not binding. It's merely a recommendation to the village board.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome. Further discussion on the motion. Right now, the motion is to move this forward as recommended by staff, correct? Motion maker?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, just want a clarification on the motion. Mr. Tarantino?
So right now, if a developer comes to the village to propose a development, and is it using the statute that we're trying to adopt up to? Is it using the new one's verbiage already? Or is it using what?
Well, as of right now, certain provisions in our zoning code are outdated and they don't apply. For example, the provision that currently is in the code that allows for a protest petition is no longer allowed under state statutes. As I mentioned, in 2017, there was an act approved that repealed the provision in the statute that specifically provided for a protest petition and a supermajority vote. That was removed back in 2017. Now, Act 2023, Act 16, further reinforces and makes it clear by creating a new section, 66.10015-3A, it's in the statute, that says a simple majority of the full member of the board is required in order to pass a zoning amendment. That effectively renders a supermajority requirement illegal, for lack of a better word. So we're cleaning up the code to eliminate that inconsistency. So if a protest petition were filed, today concerning a rezoning amendment that had been received, and it met the criteria that are spelled out in our code, it wouldn't apply. It would be an illegal protest petition. Now, the board could continue to move ahead and require a supermajority vote and let's say for the sake of discussion, deny that zoning change And then the applicant would say, well, wait a minute, statute says you can't require a supermajority vote. I'm going to sue you. So they do. And we go to court and we lose. I guess some are advocating that we go down that path, we spend the money and the time to do that because of the reasons that they feel it's important to do so. But the staff and the village attorney feel it's time to clean up the code because that provision specifically went in effect in the state statute on January 1st of 2025. So we need to clean up our code to eliminate it and maintain the consistency with the state statutes. And like with all zoning code amendments, including text amendments like this, the Plan Commission is charged under state statutes to make a recommendation to the approving authority, which is the village board. So again, you're making a recommendation either up or down to approve the amendments or not.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Mr. Williams?
Pure procedure. Trying to understand if it's a state statute that the state legally requires us to abide by, why does it require a vote at all for us to change to abide by the law of the state of Wisconsin? I mean, I guess I'm not following. I can't, if I want to go break another law, I can't vote on whether I want to break it or not. I mean, I'm going to break it or I'm not going to break it. So I guess I'm not understanding why, if it's a state statute, we actually have to vote on whether or not we have to abide by it or not.
That's a good question. I mean, it came up earlier this evening and I attempted to address it by saying what we don't want to have on our books is something that leads somebody to believe they can file a protest petition to object to a zoning change when in reality and legality, they really can't.
So even if that happened right now, we can't, according to the new statute, object to it.
You can't require a supermajority vote to approve it. Yes,
The village board
the
can.
village board couldn't.
Mr. Ewert?
Just want to go back to your presentation earlier. It sounds like this battle was lost to the development lobbyists back in 2023. Were your words on that?
Arguably back to 2017, when the first act was approved that eliminated that protest petition allowance in the statute. That's when it was taken out of the Wisconsin statutes. And it was made clear now with Act 16 that any zoning amendment requires just a simple majority of the full membership or a simple majority of the quorum present.
And I think most people in this room, as President Walter stated, were probably not overly thrilled with the overreach of the state into the local businesses, business practices. Obviously, we want to govern the way our community would ask us to govern, and we would like to reflect their community values. The state is providing us a statute that doesn't allow us to do that here. That's my understanding of it. And with your answer earlier of us not being able to be more restrictive than what the state was stating, and only to that level of vote, that makes it difficult for this board or this, whatever recommendation comes from this. I'm not a voting member here, so I can only weigh in with the community thought, I suppose. The school district's obviously concerned about this because we may be one of those petitioners at some point, or we may not be, but we may be stripped of that ability, right? According to what this change would bring into place?
If the district yes, because the old provision required a certain percentage of property owners adjacent to or across the street from a property subject to a zoning change in order to qualify as a valid protest petition. So yes, you very well could have been in a position to file or sign a protest.
Not forecasting anything with that. I'm just saying in this, we're being affected as equal as a homeowner or citizen in the community. Would be my understanding, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Thank
This
you,
isn't the
legislature.
first time the state's overreached, in my opinion, and a very recent example of that is with the solar farm. we had very many residents come out and speak out against it. Even at that time, there wasn't enough brought forward for a protest petition, but the Plan Commission and the Village Board both denied the CSM and also the change of the site plan, knowing that we were going directly against a state statute. My hope was that that particular solar farm was too small for them to worry about and they were going to go away. Because they're usually like the bigger farms like you see down in Indiana and in Western Michigan, kind of very, very large, hundreds and hundreds of acres, and this was not that. And I thought, well, this is too small a fish. They don't want to play with it. They're going to go away. But we were wrong. They pushed their precedents and brought it to BOZA, and it turned it over. And we, by state statute, had to have the CSM approved to join those two properties together because it was beyond the 90 days of anybody not approving it or bringing it forward. So our hands were tied, and it's not the first time they've done that. They did it all the way back when they had their smoking restriction. No smoking in public places, but no real rules as to how that works. You decide how it works for your community. And a lot of communities struggled with that and had to create a lot of different provisions to help catch up to that law. We see the same thing with cell towers. It's hard to fight cell towers for the same reason. The state statutes only allow certain provisions of why they can be denied, and it's very restrictive to the residents, the local residents that have to stare out their front windows and look at that every day. But again, I feel the state overreaches many, many times, and I don't agree with them, and I don't agree with them here either, because it has been used in the past. The one that comes to mind instantly was a protest petition that was brought forward for Saxony Village, and that drove that zoning to be a supermajority as well. But then this board decided to try to do something with the density there, and then once again we were brought in front of BOZA and we lost. As well. But the long and short of it is we're merely trying to match the provision that's in the state. There's no ulterior motive, but it's really up to the board to decide how they want to act on this vote. They can delay it, they can postpone it, they can table it. And if enough of the board members feel that that's what they want to do for all the reasons that have been provided tonight, they can do that. But this body will make a recommendation tonight, and either way, it will go forward to the village board for them to act upon at their next village board meeting. The discussion.
Yes, so to be clear, then if we voted no tonight, as an example, the village boards could still move forward, correct?
It would still, depending on how many people voted no, Bill, it would still
Right.
move forward. If a majority said no, it would move forward with a negative recommendation. Or if it tied, it would be no recommendation.
Either way, it goes to
A negative recommendation from us, that's what I mean.
That's
If
correct.
we made a negative recommendation, they could still pass the measure, could they not?
Yes.
Okay. I just feel like I have to say it. I have to take a stand here and say, I don't like the interference. I don't think the timing is right. That's another matter. But I just, I'm kind of pleased with the fact that we turned down the solar farm for the reasons that our citizens didn't want it. I'm also pleased that we turned down a cell tower for the same reasons. We did look for some reasons on that. That was the one that was going to be at the Lutheran church there on Mequon Road.
That's correct. They had availability to rent from another tower that was
Right,
within the
right.
proximity.
So that's my statement, anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Final thought, and then I'll let you to your business. Really, then it comes down to a vote of whether you want to fight for the infringement of the rights of local control for the village as this goes forward. I would like to see that, obviously. I think a lot of people in this community would like to see that. We've seen that with the school district when DPI overreaches or the Department of Education overreaches. We push back, and we believe that's on the behalf of the citizens that put us there to do so. Does that come with some risk? Absolutely.
And
I would agree with that. So I think that's the question that you're weighing.
Village administrator, quite out of the ordinary.
Sorry, I don't usually interject here, but on this issue, I just wanted to make a suggestion. for the planning commission and potentially for the village board. Certainly understand the pushback against the state action here, and I tend to agree with that. What I might suggest is another way to respond to that would be for the village board, and this is something staff could prepare to go to the same village board meeting along with this ordinance, a resolution to be sent to the state representatives for the village of Germantown, indicating our opposition to the state law that was changed. I think that that might be a better approach than leaving in place an ordinance that contradicts state statute. While I certainly understand the same issue with the solar farm, that did incur additional expense for the village to go through the BOZA process. If something like this came up, as of today, we cannot legally honor protest positions with a 3/4 majority vote on the village board. Leaving the village ordinance and indicating that that is the case can create confusion with residents, with potential developers. It could lead to lawsuits in the future that incur additional expense. And I completely understand for both the residents, the members of the Plan Commission, the desire to let the state know that this is not okay with us. But another mechanism for doing that might limit risk and liability would be for the board to pass a resolution stating that and then forwarding that to the state legislators who represent the village of Germantown.
It doesn't completely eliminate for residents to bring forward a petition of any kind against any zoning, and walking around and having their neighbors sign and say that we are not in favor of this zoning change, or we are not in favor of this CUP for whatever reason. I mean, that can always be done and handed to the village clerk and used as part of the consideration of the board for whatever that issue is. That petition would come forward. So it doesn't remove the ability to make petitions. What it does is it, in this instance, if there was a petition brought forward, it had to be a certain group of residents that touched the property or were in direct proximity of the property. And if you had a majority of those signers on the petition, then it demanded a 3/4 vote. And that's how the outline of that particular ordinance read. And that's what the state changed. They removed that and said, no, it can go forward on just a regular majority vote, but it doesn't remove the ability for those that want to bring a petition forward. You can always bring a petition forward and have as many signatures as you can possibly get, because it does have influence and it does show that people are either upset or not in favor of this for whatever reason the petition states.
Thank you.
Further discussion, Ms. Hank.
Could you tell us what the acronym BOZA stands for?
BOZA stands for the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry.
That's all right. My other question, or really commentary, was thanks for that opportunity of how we could provide some clarity, because I think it is important that we have clarity in our zoning ordinance. I personally don't like this change either, but I think protecting the village for unnecessary expenses in the future is important, but we also need to tell the state that they've overstepped. So I personally like the recommendation of letting our representatives know that we want to be able to govern our own community.
Should we carry that in this motion as well? For a recommendation to the village board?
I would make that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. And we have an amendment brought forward to create a resolution to the state in regards to this body, and perhaps the village board, if it so chooses, feel that they have overreached and exerted additional powers that take away a lot of the power of the local community. And maybe I'm not saying it right, but it's basically a resolution in regards to the way that Administrator Krecklow had referenced it. I have a motion. I need a second.
Question before I second.
You can't second it without.
I'll second it for
You got to second it first. Okay. All right. Motion made to amend and discussion. Trustee Baum.
My question back to you, back to everybody, is we have a motion to approve and send this further requirement.
You have a motion for positive recommendation. That's correct.
So we're going to approve it and say we want it changed. That's the way the motion and the amendment is going to read. Or is the intent to deny it, send it forward with a denial to the village board?
My friendly amendment was to approve it so that we are not opening the village up to unnecessary expenses because we would be in the wrong if we required the supermajority, since the statute overrules it, but also notify the state that they overreached in their requirement for us.
So we're clear. Further discussion on a motion to amend.
So just as presented, obviously you're restricting your vote to all or nothing on those two items.
No, the vote can still fail.
No, I'm saying you can either vote for, right, the change and the resolution to the state.
That's correct.
But if
That's
somebody,
what the
if somebody
amendment would be for both.
would want one or the other, we'd like to vote no as a negative, right? Positive recommendation for the resolution to the state, correct? But you would also then be forced to vote yes for the positive recommendation to the changes.
No, you could vote against it, and then it would go forward with the,
Yeah, I'm thinking you split the voting.
no,
The way that's proposed, you couldn't.
not the way it's
I just wanted
it's currently proposed, the motion and the amendment.
To get it to be, that's what I'm trying to present, is to get it to be the negative, you have to deny this motion and the original motion. Then we have to make a new motion to send it forward with a negative recommendation. And then add in.
Split it into two.
Go ahead.
Sure, you can have a separate resolution or amendment proposal to approve it. And whether you deny it or approve it, you can have a separate motion to direct staff to craft a resolution to be sent to the Wisconsin legislature.
Okay, so with that, then going back to Ms. Hank, do you wish to have your amendment as a separate vote or combined within the motion earlier stated? Okay, so then the motion then is for, amended motion is to have a separate vote on the resolution to the state. Everybody's clear? All right, so right now we're voting on the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? One opposed? Motion carries. Now back to the motion, which the original motion was to send the zoning change or the amendments to, the text amendments to the zoning forward to the village board with a positive recommendation. Any further discussion on that? No further discussion on that. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, raise your hands. Two opposed, motion carries. Now we're back to, no, we have both settled, correct? No, we have to vote on the amendment? Or do we, with that vote on the amendment, we're making that resolution, correct?
That's where I'm confused.
Thought you were going to have a separate motion.
All right, then we can have a separate vote on the resolution itself. So the vote now is for anyone that is in favor of writing a separate resolution to the state in regards to what we feel is their overreach into the municipality and through their changes to their statutes. That would be what we would vote on now. So all those in favor of that, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. All right, that takes care of new business item A.
Who made the motion? Who was the second to craft a resolution to
Ms.
say?
Hank made the motion and trustee Baum is the second.
Okay, you got that, Jordan?
Well, you're the minute taker now. Today. All right.
I'm lost on how this is going to the village board with a positive or negative recommendation?
Positive.
Positive?
Right.
Is that what you all understand?
Yes.
Well, I didn't necessarily get the count.
It goes to the village board for vote, correct?
Okay, but how was the count? I couldn't tell how you got my vote.
What was your vote, Bill?
My vote was no.
And who voted no?
Was there, okay.
vote no, against it, yes to send it to.
Please, audience, please. Say it again.
I thought I was to vote no for the change, to vote yes to send it to
For resolution.
resolution.
Okay. So you
I think I voted perfectly backwards.
perfectly backwards. Okay.
I raised my hand at the,
So all those that would not want it to go forward as a positive recommendation to the village board, please raise your hands. And that's Bill as well, correct, Bill?
Correct.
All right, so that's 3-3, motion fails. So then it goes forward with a negative recommendation.
But I thought you only had two that voted no last time. So that's why. I
We
was trying-
did, as far as we counted, because Mr. Tarantino was confused and
Okay.
reversed what he thought he was voting in favor of. So you have
We'll talk-
3,
we'll talk
4,
to him about that later.
and 3 against. Ms. Hank,
6 of you.
there's only 6 of us here. He's Mr. I did.
That's 6.
That's 1, 2, and Mr. Williams was 3, and then 1, 2, and Mr. Shattuck is 3. So when at a tie, the vote fails, or so it would go forward with a negative recommendation. 3-3. Tie, the motion fails. Any other questions on new business item A from the commissioners? All right, well, that was easy. Let's go to new business item B, Village of Germantown Community Development Department, Village Center District presentation and discussion of mixed-use redevelopment proposal status and next steps for Mequon Road and Pilgrim Road on tonight's agenda for discussion only. To start off this new business item, we'll turn the meeting back over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're not voting.
Go standing back.
As discussed at the February 10th Plan Commission meeting, the village board has been evaluating the merits of a public-private partnership that presents a unique opportunity to guide and control the shape and timing for redevelopment of an outdated area within the designated village center district, specifically along Mequon Road, with a mix of new residential and commercial retail land uses consistent with the 2050 plan. The 25-plus acre area is located in the southeast corner of the Mequon at Pilgrim Road intersection and includes the old Flower Source property, BP Gas and Convenience Store, the BMO Bank, and the Ascension Columbia St. Mary's properties. While the board has been treading new ground in its process of evaluating this opportunity and not necessarily following the script laid out word for word in the 2050 plan, the effort has tracked along the same path toward implementing the opportunity area and village center district policies that are adopted in the 2050 plan. And as will be discussed in more detail tonight, the process continues to track along the same next steps process laid out in the economic development and implementation sections of the 2050 plan for creating a mixed-use pedestrian-friendly village center. In February, the consultants retained by the board to help with the process, Bailey Copeland and Rinka, talked about the process, including a detailed summary of the outcomes of 2 visioning workshops held in November and in January, and also how all of that has resulted in the mixed-use market plots, concept plan, and renderings that they put together and shared with us at the February meeting. At that meeting on February 10th, we also indicated that if the village board decided to proceed with the project following their February 17th meeting, the consultants would be back to present and discuss the next steps. On February 17th, the village board did direct staff to move forward with the project. So tonight's presentation is just that. It's the start of the next steps in the overall process. The Plan Commission will begin working with Rinka and staff on developing a new mixed-use zoning district that will guide future redevelopment, while also providing for the continuation of existing land uses within the village center district. Tonight's meeting is for information and discussion purposes only. No action will be taken. No decisions will be made by the Plan Commission. Rinka and our consultants will be laying out the groundwork for future meetings at which the new zoning district regulations for redevelopment within the village center district will be presented for public feedback, discussion, public hearing, consideration, and eventually adoption by the Plan Commission and Village Board. With that, I'd like to introduce for tonight Bailey Copeland with Copeland Associates, Eric Main with Rinka, and Sam Schultz with Von Briesen and Roper, who will be presenting the next steps for the Village Center redevelopment project.
Good evening. Since the completion of the 2050 plan, the village has been diligently working to bring the plan's vision to life. Today, we want to walk through where we are now and where we are going, providing you with a forecast of what is to come. Before we dive into the specifics, I want to remind you of the main goals of this project, how the 2050 plan has been implemented, specifically in relation to this catalytic project. This plan aims to achieve three important goals: housing, creating more housing opportunities to support the village's growth and meet the demand of housing for years to come; forecasting economic growth that benefits local businesses and attracts new ones, allowing residents to shop, eat, drink in their own community; and promoting cohesive land use planning that ensures efficient use of land while protecting areas' natural resources. I want to touch briefly on and just take a moment to talk about housing and its significant role in meeting the evolving needs of the community in this master plan. Multifamily housing plays a key role in increasing density, offering diverse housing options, and optimizing available space. Its benefits in the communities in several ways: attracting a variety of residents, supporting local businesses, grows tax base and ensures efficient use of resources, and reduces sprawl and promotes responsible land use, fosters vibrant, walkable neighborhoods with easy access to amenities. In short, multifamily is vital for creating thriving village center while preserving Germantown's character. Next, let's explore how multifamily housing supports commercial development and long-term growth for Germantown. Starting with multifamily housing provides a foundation for future commercial success. It establishes a customer base and the necessary infrastructure for businesses to thrive. This is crucial for success for mixed-use development, where the initial focus in the master plan is multifamily housing, creating a natural progression towards commercial growth. This is why the Village Center Master Plan is phased, with phase one focusing on housing. By starting with multifamily development, we set the stage for long-term commercial success. Now that we understand the importance of phasing for the project for the commercial success, let's focus on how increasing population and density will attract the right businesses for the Village Center. Germantown has faced challenges in attracting and retaining shops, restaurants, and bars, and other commercial users due to a lack of sufficient residential population to support these businesses and draw in the new ones the community desires. We've also heard the current businesses struggle with staffing. By bringing more residents, we not only create a larger customer base, but also provide a workforce to sustain these businesses. This strategy has proven successful in other communities. By starting with multifamily housing, we build the critical mass needed to support and attract new businesses. As the residential population grows, commercial development will naturally follow, fostering a vibrant, thriving community that benefits both businesses and its residents. Finally, let's look at the strong demand for housing in Germantown and the need for a variety of housing options. As Germantown's population continues to grow, trends show a decline in average household size, highlighting the increase for the need of new housing options. As stated in the 2050 plan, there is no one-size-fits-all ratio of multifamily to single-family housing. Rather, a mix of housing types can provide options to individuals and families with different incomes and preferences, which change over time and in different stages of life. This reinforces the idea that just because some residents prefer single-family homes or homeownership, it doesn't mean that approach works for everyone. Different people have different housing needs based on their life stages, personal finances, and preferences. That's why it's important to offer a variety of housing options that cater to these changing needs. Currently, all comparable multifamily developments in the area are operating at 95% occupancy or higher in the current reporting, indicating a significant demand for additional units. Here is a look at the current vacancy rate. Germantown is 2.5%, Mequon 1.1%, Menominee Falls 4.6%, Cedarburg 2.3%. These low vacancy rates are a clear signal that demand for housing is high. According to a market study, the Germantown will need over 1,000 additional multifamily units in the next 5 years to meet this demand. This reinforces the importance of multifamily as a critical component of meeting the housing needs of your community and providing options for all types of residents. The 2050 plan outlines clear next steps, which we will walk you through where we are and where we are going, as stated in the 2050 plan. We have identified key parcels and illustrated multiple opportunities for development. The first project, or Catalytic Opportunity Zone, has been in the works for some time now. As stated in the 2050 plan, investors seek high-quality development and flexibility to ensure both financial success and alignment with the village's long-term vision. The village has worked closely with residents and stakeholders to ensure this development reflects community desires. This effort has attracted highly qualified developers eager to partner with the village and their residents. Significant due diligence has been conducted to confirm that this area is the right one for this development. Here's a list of major due diligence tasks completed so far: stakeholder engagement, master planning, traffic impact analysis, environmental investigation, financial feasibility, and survey and wetland delineations, to name a few. Through the master planning process led by RINCA, a thoughtful conceptual plan has been created to ensure connectivity and efficient access. Eric will provide more details on this later in the presentation. The village is currently working on the creation of the Tax Increment District 10 and seeking additional funding through various grant programs, along with working with developers. Bill Cosson from Ehlers, the village's financial partner, presented to the village board on February 17th. During that presentation, he explained the TIF tool, how neighboring communities have successfully used it in similar developments, and the feasibility of this project. The village board approved the creation of TID 10. Ehlers will lead this upcoming activities for TID creation. And so here's a tentative schedule of what will be to come for the TID creation. Furthermore, here's the proposed TID boundary that Mr. Costin had presented. The project cost and projected development is to be phased to mitigate the impact to the village. The first phase is in the blue and the second phase is in the purple. In each phase, we've assessed the financial feasibility. The proposed conceptual plan outlines each phase, with phase 1 focusing on high concentration of residential, and phase 2 featuring a mix of residential and commercial spaces. For the project to be successful, these key metrics must be met. We believe the plan should incorporate a height of up to 5 stories with a high concentration of units in building A and B. This approach will help ensure the financial feasibility of the project, start addressing the housing needs in the area, and help attract commercial users by driving more people to the area. Please keep in mind that these are conceptual plans, and once the first developer is on board, these plans may change. Eric will go into more detail about the conceptual development later in the presentation. While we understand this type of project hasn't been done within the village yet, similar projects in surrounding communities have been successful. As part of our efforts and to support the development of this project, we are actively seeking grant opportunities. These grants will provide additional financial support, particularly for aspects of the project that align with public and community-focused goals, such as housing, infrastructure improvements, and environmental sustainability. Securing grant funds will help support the success of this project. We are currently exploring various federal, state, and local funding options that can help us achieve the project's objectives. Once we identify the right opportunities, we will move forward with the application process, which includes submitting detailed proposals that outlines the project scope, financial plans, and potential impact in the community. Our goal is to leverage these grants to enhance the overall feasibility of the project, ultimately making it a valuable addition to the village. We are also working with developers for the first phase of the development. An RFQ, or request for qualification, was issued with 14 qualified developers responding. Once the zoning and scope of the developments are clearly defined, a request for proposal will be issued. The process will be competitive, transparent, and focus on securing the best outcome for the village. It is essential that the village's short-term and long-term goals align. The vision statement has always been central to the planning process, ensuring a thoughtful plan that can be executed appropriately with long-term vision in mind. This will continue through the completion of the project. The village currently controls 3 properties in this area, 2 of which have closed and 1 is scheduled to close in June. We continue to collaborate with the property owners and tenants interested in being part of this project. This brings us to the main purpose of today's meeting. We will be working with staff to introduce a new mixed-use zoning district as outlined in the 2050 plan. In collaboration with Rinka and Von Briesen and Roper, we will create a draft of the new zoning district. Sam will go into the new zoning district shortly. Additionally, we will work on creating a planned development district and the necessary legal documents to ensure a cohesive, high-quality development. I would like to turn it over to Eric from Rinka.
Thank you, Bailey. The intent of today's meeting is to get into a little bit more detail on the master plan, talk about some next steps in the master planning process, and then begin a conversation about a very first draft of what a zoning district would look like to support this development. So first, I'd like to start with some of the community engagement activities and the timeline that we engaged in the process, which you see listed here. So we had 2 visioning sessions culminating in a village input meeting, then finally a village board meeting, which leads us to our meeting today. The future meetings, we have the informational planning commission meeting, as well as a final draft review at our next cycle. And then finally, the recommendation for the zoning adoption to the village board. So we began to create a vision statement together with the community and with using the 2050 plan as a starting point in a prompt. I'd like to read that vision statement. I see it on this side. The vision for this site is to create a welcoming gateway to Germantown that reflects the community's rich heritage, enhances its sense of place. By embracing the goals of the 2050 plan, the area will offer spaces that bring people together, diverse housing options, vibrant local businesses, inviting public space, all characterized all connected through pedestrian-friendly infrastructure. This vision celebrates Germantown's unique character while fostering connections and opportunities for future generations. So that was the sort of goal for the master plan, and we've been continuing to make progress to meet that vision. This is information you've already seen, so I'll skip over this pretty quickly. But in the first visiting session, we collaborated on some planning principles. We prioritized those principles. We dreamed and learned about what makes Germantown unique. And from there, in our second visioning session, we went into detail on the top 4 priority principles you see listed here. From there, we went and did some more further research, engaging some community stakeholders and really learning about the 4 principles, which we brought back to the group for more feedback. From there, we implemented the first time we began actually master planning and presented a village center experiential master plan. And at that meeting, there was pretty positive feedback in terms of the optimism toward a development in this catalytic site. So from there, this was the plan that kind of came out of that meeting, which is the framework for development. We see a series of land use recommendations that are coming forward from this master plan. And we'd like to now get into more detail. Bailey did a great job of kind of setting up what each one of those development zones needs from a financial perspective and from a development perspective. I'd like to get into a little bit and talk about the design. Again, this is a conceptual framework. This isn't about defining exactly what this development is going to look like. This is about setting up a framework for development and controlling the quality of development to make sure that these are the kinds of amenities that the community asked for in the 2050 plan, that they're asking for and holding us accountable today. So I'd like to get into some of the details of the master plan. So it was very clear in the 2050 plan and from community feedback that this is a catalytic opportunity. Centered on that Pilgrim and Mequon roads is an opportunity for a key gateway and identity for the community. Here you're seeing a couple of examples of how that's been done in other communities, and shortly you'll see a rendering of how that can be done here in this catalytic opportunity zone. In addition to the general gateway, there are also 2 primary entries into the campus, which you see also highlighted in this drawing, and you'll see that in a rendering shortly. Moving in further into the development, parking was one of the concerns or talking points that we heard from quite a few individuals. So we did a deep dive and got some great feedback from the development and brokerage community on the kinds of retail, food and beverage, and commercial opportunities that could come to this opportunity. You see highlighted in blue are the parking zones to support the development within that catalytic sort of market plots city center zone. In the darker blue are parking zones. The darker blue are guest parking zones, and you see the arrows pointing into the yellow colored buildings. That the multifamily buildings in the plan are equipped with underground parking. So not only is that convenient and what the market wants to see in multifamily, higher quality multifamily development, it also is great way of or utilization for the land itself. Finally, the event space, we talked a lot about the creation of a market plots of something that's uniquely Germantown, that's destinational, that has an opportunity to host many great events for the community and future generations. But it also needs to be well parked and have convenient parking. You see the parking zones highlighted here in this drawing in addition to the market plots itself. I'd like to talk a little bit about the quality of development and how we, again, continue to build a framework together, a framework to support very high quality architecture. You see a couple of examples of some multifamily projects Those are all those developments in the master plan shown in yellow. And again, this isn't about a final configuration or building layout. This is about a framework for development. So how do we make those buildings that we're seeing on the left, how do we make those feel uniquely Germantown? And that will be one of our next aspects that we'll begin working together with the Plan Commission and with the community feedback. So here we see some early exploration of really starting to define and give a framework for development so that when developers come in and start to show interest in these potential parcels to be part of this catalytic development, how do we hold them accountable in terms of an aesthetic that you all want to see within your community and the Plan Commission wants to see in the community? So here are a few aspects: roof slope, roof edge condition, facade hierarchy, articulation, allowable dimensions, proportioning systems. These are all aspects that we'll get into more detail on, and hopefully we can build a development framework, and that'll be part of that plan development overlay that helps guide the aesthetic. So we could, sort of transition a multifamily building and sort of create something that is more sort of uniquely Germantown. Okay, from there, I'd like to talk a little bit more about density. So we did sort of highlight the different building heights, and again, this isn't a requirement. The developers aren't required to go to this building height, but these are some heights that we used in the calculation of potential tax increment and development to build the kinds of amenitized market plots that we've been discussing and to attract the developers. A lot of the points that Bailey brought up earlier in the presentation. So here you see three different colors. There's three kind of gradients of orange, and the way that we're setting up this master plan, you'll see how it plays out in the visuals shortly, is anything around the road, along the roadways, so both Mequon and Pilgrim, we're intentionally keeping the height limitations much lower. So the idea is that much more sort of walkable and sort of connected to the streetway. As you transition deeper into the site, then that density or height limitations begin to increase. So we're positioning 2 and 3 stories along Pilgrim and Mequon, 3 stories as transitional development. And you see this, the success stories are on the left. So you see the image in the top left is the Foxtown Brewery or Foxtown, what is it? Is it brewing? Foxtown Brewing, right on Mequon Road. Again, that's, it's a similar kind of relationship to the street, transitioning to that 3-story development, which is also another Foxtown example in your neighboring Mequon community, and then transitioning deeper into the site where you're further from the roadway, up to 450, 500 feet from Pilgrim before we have any kind of mid-density or mid-dense residential. So looking at the numbers, this is a full development summary that we're now sort of identifying all of the different heights and densities throughout the development. Again, this is a concept. This concept will evolve and change, and the Plan Commission will have the opportunity to review every single one of these buildings as they come in for review. But this is about establishing that framework to provide quality development that can really drive a great amenitized market plots for the community, an experience for the community. So from there, we've evolved. I think we looked at a couple of these renderings the first time we were, or a couple of weeks ago. We've now taken those development parcels, and we've began to start to layer in that uniquely Germantown look and feel. So here you see that primary gateway leading from the corner. This image is taken on the corner of Mequon and Pilgrim, looking into the market plots. with some wayfinding and signage, you see this great view corridor into the market plots with development pulled right out to the street, that 2-story development out to the street. Think retail, commercial, food and beverage. You can see the cafe tables and chairs pulled out in the foreground. As we come along Pilgrim, this is one of those primary gateway or entry points into the community. Again, the 3-story step down 3-story residential on Pilgrim, and then as we progress deeper into the development, the building height gradient increases to the 5-story residential you see in the distance. So the impact on the street, the impact on the surrounding areas of the development are minimized through that transition, that gradial transition down to the street. And then circling back to some of those views that we looked at, maybe the Plan Commission hasn't seen these, but then in the village board meeting, we looked at some visuals from within the market plots itself. So if you imagine those parking areas in a few slides ago, colored in that light blue, convenient parking. Imagine you've parked your car and you're now walking to a dinner or to the cafe or maybe a small retailer. This would be your experience walking from that parking zone. And you see the market plots on the right, the market street on the left. This is showing a typical day where that market street is open. Again, an aerial view looking at the gateway connection to Mequon and Pilgrim. Again, this is a typical day with the street open. But on a market day, that street it's a convertible street, so it'd be a minimal curb edge, so it'd be very walkable and pedestrian friendly, easy to close down and create a great market environment. And of course, thinking about 4 seasons as we design in Wisconsin. So it's eventual potential reuse as a Christmas market and with ice, with or without ice skating. With that, so that's kind of the update on the development of the overall master plan. I think that we should now talk a little bit, and I've also layered on some of the plan development design guidelines. Those design guidelines will coordinate very, very closely with the new zoning district, which I invite Sam Schultz from Von Briesen to discuss.
Hi, everyone. I'm the new one here, so you probably haven't seen me before, but my name is Sam Schultz. I'm a land use and development advisor at Von Briesen and Roper. So I'm a planner who works for a law firm. I'm the person who gets brought in to write the boring part of the pretty pictures that you just saw. So zoning text is kind of where I live on the day-to-day, and I'd be happy to, walk you through that now. So as identified in the village's comprehensive plan, looking for a village center district, we have to take this and turn it to an actual zoning district and text that goes into it. The village intends the village center district or the VC district to accommodate a mix of uses in a walkable village center context. This is something that a number of suburban communities similar to you are looking at adopting or have adopted. So, we'll try to find the balance of what works for Germantown based on all the visioning and your feedback as we go through this. But just know that this is not particularly unique in terms of like regionally. This is fairly common for a suburban community of Germantown's size to have a mixed use district like this. Through this type of district, it'll function a little bit differently than the way your standard zoning code works. So most zoning codes are Euclidean in nature. That means they regulate uses of properties, and then the form controls or what buildings look like and how they sit on lots are really related to that use. So it's a strong use control and lighter form controls. Through this village center district, when you start introducing these mix of uses, that equation changes a bit. And this is the way a lot of communities are going when they want to have a strong design focus in their code, is moving to a form-based approach. This happens nationally, locally, regionally, et cetera. So again, we'll be fairly flexible on use controls. Permitted uses would include assembly, business, mercantile, natural areas, residential, to build out that mix of residential, open space, and commercial opportunity. And we want to permit that both horizontally, so differing uses next to each other within the same zoning district, but also vertically, so differing uses within the same principal building. So try to capture all of that mix of use definition there. And we want to set flexible overall district standards. We want to be able to apply this in this immediate area, but we are creating a new zoning district. So we want to take into consideration if the village ever did want to apply this in other areas, we want to be flexible enough to look at, if the village decided to acquire more properties or in a different area of its master plan also wanted to apply this district, it would be there and able to go through the zoning map amendment process at that time. The specific building architecture that Eric just talked about will live within that planned development district overlay. So this very basic graphic kind of shows everything, both in land use planning generally, as Jeff and Jordan could tell you, and in this specific circumstance, everything defers back to the comprehensive plan. The Village Center District will be a zoning district that lies on top of that, turns the goals and objectives of the comp plan into reality. And then there'll be a planned development district that lies on top of that to contain those architectural standards that are very specific to the property that you're discussing right now. So I'm kind of in this middle layer, and that's where we'll live. The structure of the ordinance will look similar to some of your other zoning districts from an organizational standpoint. So we have things like lot, yard, and building regulations, where we'll regulate the residential uses and other uses separately. We have things like minimum lot areas per dwelling units. Right now, we're at about 1,700 square feet for gross acreage in the entire district. And so we're trying to keep flexible standards that you refer to in your comprehensive plan. We'll have build to zones that are also somewhat flexible. You might be used to like a minimum setback of 25 feet for a residential property, but this is trying to provide a little bit of flexibility where someone could place a building. So here we have a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 20 to allow buildings to move a bit closer to the street, but still provide some local context for how they're sited. Finally, we'll have requirements for % of building within the build to zone. So someone can't put 100% parking lot in front of a building. You'll have to have some amount of building frontage that goes within that setback zone. As you saw in some of those draft renderings and master planning documents, there are some buildings that are somewhat U-shaped. So we're still testing those. And I'll caveat all of this with we are actively talking to your village staff to make sure this fits in nicely with your existing code as well. So this is the first blush. We're still working on all the final numbers and are open to feedback on those items. From a principal building design, we'll have some base standards in there that won't get into the level of architectural detail regarding materials or things in the planned development district, but we will have things like transparency requirements to make sure that commercial and residential properties have some amount of window transparency you can see in and are active with the surrounding area. Primary street facing entrance, so you'll know where a primary entrance is. It's not hidden around the side or rear. Ground story floor to ceiling heights, so allowing commercial ground floors to go a bit taller than a residential ground floor, just to provide that common, 18-foot taller commercial first floor. And then looking at principal building heights as well. So these are maximum. 3 stories for a commercial building and 5 stories for a residential building is where we are right now. And we're trying to write the rules to allow some flexibility in roof pitch, knowing that you all for this specific area are looking at more Germanic design characteristics. But if you look to apply it otherwise, we're certainly not prohibiting other roof types, a mansard or a flat or anything else. From a parking and loading requirements, the emphasis on the regulations in this district will be a pedestrian and walkable environment. So requiring things like sidewalks and accessible connections between sidewalks and front doors of buildings will be spelled out. We'll require bicycle parking for short and long term to also encourage people to be able to ride their bike here if they'd like and find a place to park it. And then have flexible parking requirements with a credit system for shared public and adjacent parking lots. Being that, particularly for the market plots area, there'll be kind of flexible, close it off or leave it on. We want to take that into consideration with buildings while still setting a minimum parking requirement that developers will have to meet. Landscaping and screening. We'll have an emphasis on landscaping requirements for areas visible to the general public. So things like vehicular use areas like parking lots and drive aisles, mechanical equipment screening, et cetera. Like the things that you would not want to look at or you'd like some landscaping to be, that's where we're trying to set prescriptive standards while allowing a little bit more flexibility in areas that are not generally visible to the public. In the specific site for the that you're talking about right now for the planned development district, a lot of that will look like open space in the back, so not overly landscaping the things that you want to protect as existing open space areas. That landscaping code will also provide options for site design flexibility. So they kind of range in intensity options based on the local context. For example, if you have more space between a parking lot and a street, you might be able to screen that parking lot with only landscaping. Whereas if that parking lot moves closer to the street, then you might introduce things like fencing or masonry walls because there's less width in that area, or you're going to require more opaque standards for that screening. We'll have an emphasis on native plantings in low maintenance areas. We want to make sure this feels like a part of Germantown, and the landscaping should also reflect that, the species chosen within those screening areas. And diversity requirements and credits for things like native seed mixes and natural stormwater retention design, again, to reinforce the open space areas and make them feel a part of it. So that's the long and short of my text. I'll turn it back over to Bailey.
Thanks, Sam. So we just wanted to wrap it up with what's to come. So as we mentioned throughout this presentation, there's the creation of the tax increment district. Those dates would be an initial joint review board meeting and the Planning Commission public hearing in front of you on March 31st, followed by a village board action to create the TID on April 21st. Next would be the zoning district that Sam just spoke of. That would be back in front of the Planning Commission with a draft to be presented on March 31st for further discussion and necessary revisions. And then that would be followed by the public hearing and Planning Commission with a recommendation for adoption of this new district or denial on April 14th. Finally, there's the creation of the Plan Development District, or the PDD, and the design guidelines that would follow the results of the zoning district. And then finally, it would be the developers and the request for proposal process. And again, that would be following the results of the development district. So I'll turn it back over to Director Retzlaff.
Thank you, Bailey. I'd just like to add, emphasize the March 31st meeting date. It's important for a number of reasons, including, as mentioned, we're going to have a public hearing of the tax increment district scheduled before the Plan Commission. So more detailed information, the actual project plan is being put together as we speak and will be available soon for inspection by the public as well as members of the Planning Commission. That'll be presented to you on March 31st for a recommendation. And at the same meeting, we're going to be presenting some actual zoning code regulations along the lines of what Sam was summarizing and describing for you, based on his and others and Eric's and our internal staff experiences. We're going to be putting together that zoning district set of regulations for your review and consideration, discussion, commentary, feedback, and then after March 31st, we'll go back and revise those regulations to address those items. And bring back to you in April for consideration for recommendation for adoption as part of a zoning code amendment. And with that, I guess, as I mentioned earlier, tonight is just for discussion purposes. So at this point, I guess we could open it up for some comments, questions from the Plan Commission members.
Commissioners? Mr. Tarantino?
If it would go up to the 5-story, how does that change the number of units from, if it can't be 5 stories? Because he had said it wasn't, first, doesn't have.
Yeah,
to
the
be
idea is to
that way.
build in some flexibility for the developers who would be providing through the RFP process their ideas and designs and try to address the unit count target, as well as comply with the particular design standards. The goal is to have a very high quality development, which, in turn reflects good quality materials, expensive architecture and the like. And so, as mentioned, the higher the density, the more likely and the ability to actually pay for the costs that will go into the development itself. And so if we're going to adjust and play around with the height allowance, yes, that will have a bearing on eventually the number of units. Depends on, things like what we call lot coverage. We'll probably be getting into more of a floor area ratio, which is comparable in terms of a lot coverage percentage that we've dealt with in the past. But those things we'll be bringing to you in March for further discussion in detail.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions, comments? I have a question for the zoning. So usually when we create any type of new zoning or different zoning, it's throughout the village. So it can be applied to throughout any part of the village, any change in any zoning code or a new zoning code. This one, it sounds like though, and correct me if I'm wrong, is designated just to be within that village center district, not within the whole village. And if it's not, can it be designated just to that area so that it applies to?
So to be clear, there's 2 different zoning items that you'll have for consideration. There's the village center district, which could be applied in other areas as, people apply for it or as the village board sees fit. That zoning district will be part of the standard districts for you all to choose from as a legislative body. The planned development district would lay on top of that with those materials requirements, detailed architectural standards that would be specific to
this area.
Yep.
And then within that, the PPD or however you want to state it is, then you can also set maximum height within that part of the zoning, correct? Not within the main village center district, but within the actual PPD?
You would want to have heights probably discussed in both is the short answer to your question.
Okay.
What I always emphasize in zoning code discussions is everything comes with a consequence, right? So if you reduce the heights, that might come with a consequence of less nice building materials, or it might come with a consequence that, other amenities that you'd like to include from a public standpoint are less affordable. And so you can choose as a legislative body whatever you want, but just know that every decision has a pro and con. We'll try to lay those out for you so those are clear in your decision-making process.
And are those the steps, for instance, that was followed? I mean, we saw some pictures of the village center around Fox Brothers Brewery and all that. Are those the steps that Mequon followed to create their district and their area?
Yep. Generally, it's actually kind of a mixture of both. So Mequon has a village center district it's very prescriptive, but it's more of that base district level. So it's widely applicable. But again, it can be applied however the village board wants it to. The other one for Drexel that was up there, that is more of a planned development district. So we're looking at kind of a mixture of both here to try to provide the most flexibility for you all to administer those districts as you'd like.
All right, got it.
Dean, I would add that in addition to what Sam just said, the intention is that the village center zoning district would be available for application within the village center district. And not necessarily be able to be applied anywhere else in the village.
Right.
We have wording in the 2050 plan right now that specifically says to create a village center district to guide a development within the village center. And so if necessary, we could add additional language to the plan or to the district that we're creating that specifically says this is intended for application in the village center district. And that's the intention. I mean, frankly, if we're going to have a height requirement or allowance and a density allowance that's consistent with what's in the 2050 plan, that's not necessarily appropriate for other areas in the village.
Okay, would that also include places along County Line Road west of Appleton Avenue? Could that be applied there, or would that simply be a PPD? If that was looking for redevelopment, or somebody came forward and had some ideas for what they wanted to see for redevelopment, or like a walking area, or put in a component of residential or high density residential as part of their proposal, can this be cookie cuttered into that, or that would be something totally different?
It's possible that we could create another new zoning district or craft this one so that it could be applied in those commercial corridors. I mean, we do have the county line, the Mequon Landing corridor that in the plan specifically say they allow for densities up to 10 units per acre. The village center district allows up to 25 units per acre. So there's some differences there that we'd have to build into whatever zoning district that we would apply to those other areas. The thought is that we would do a master plan for those areas as well, and possibly create or modify existing zoning to accommodate future redevelopment of those particular areas.
Okay.
But we're moving forward.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, Mr. Williams.
Two questions. One, and I apologize, I missed the initial meeting last month when you provided this the initial proposal. But my question is the marketplace supposed to be kind of like a public market, like we're talking about in Mequon? And two, seems like it's very heavily focused or weighted on residential versus retail and commercial. Is there a chance that that evolves, or is that the plan moving forward, that it's going to be that way, that proportion or allocation?
Right. It's bounded by commercial and retail along the primary streets, because that's where the commercial and retail will best thrive.
Just in the corner, right?
Yep. Correct. We did get some feedback from the brokerage community, and we had some really robust conversations about which part of this master plan would be most appropriate for commercial. And there was a pretty strong feeling that both Pilgrim, but essentially Mequon is, anything visible from Mequon will thrive and perform well, and you'll be able to attract some good opportunities to those developments. But after the first row of retail, it becomes much more difficult. So, we had heard about this idea of having a market plots or a gathering meeting space. So that's what we crafted was, the feedback from the brokerage community, coupled with this idea of a meeting gathering space. So to answer your first part of your question about what's the intent, or what is that market plots designed for? We had two brainstorming sessions where we asked the community what they wanted to see that's lacking in Germantown, what kind of events. We got some good feedback. And we took those comments out to a couple of folks. We talked to the Chamber of Commerce individual, and we had a couple of good conversations around what events are occurring today in Germantown that maybe don't have a permanent home, that could come in and be part of this development. And there was some identified. I think that information is probably in the packet that you have.
I did see that. So the retail and commercial area that you're talking about could be various businesses, but it's not going to evolve around the idea of like a public market. Again, like across the street from Foxtown or downtown Milwaukee, you're not looking at a public market type.
Not a permanent public market, but I think, right, if, exactly, once we begin testing the market, if that becomes a potential, we often, create multi-tenant buildings that could be an open market space. If that user, showed itself, that definitely that would be a consideration for sure.
Great, Matt.
Ms. Henk?
I also missed the last meeting, but did get to watch the presentation online, so appreciate that. Today's was similar but different. I think several of the folks in the crowd were also present last month, so helpful to have an update. I also very much appreciated that in the agenda packet were questions and the answers. And I felt like those were very informative to prepare for tonight's meeting. So I don't really have any questions. In a professional setting, was involved in both the Drexel Town Square development and the Foxtown development. So seeing components of them coming together, both the positives of those developments coming together for this one was really encouraging. So thanks to the team for putting together a nice package.
Mr. Ewert?
I have several questions, and I guess we'll start since you just alluded to these question and answers that were provided in the packet today. I'll go to the last one. How will the additional residential affect the school district? And it starts with studies have shown that multifamily housing does not place undue strain on local public schools. Who answered that and how did they come to that conclusion?
So we had a conversation with the village board, the superintendent, thank you. And we had a couple of data points that we discussed with them. The first one is the demand of younger school age children that multifamily puts on the school district. And it's actually very low. I think, I don't want to quote a number without it in front of me, but it's extremely low compared to single family house. So that was one of the considerations. The other consideration or feedback that we got was that, in order to keep a high level of education, the superintendent mentioned that having opportunities for teachers and staff in the school district to have a great level of accommodations, that multifamily can help fill that gap. So those two things were discussed with the superintendent.
Okay.
Oh, yes, and they're in the middle of creating a study, a capacity study for the school district. That study is, I don't know if he gave us a date, but it's in the works right now.
I can give you a date. I was in that conversation. That's not how that went. We provided you several data points, and I'm going to try to control my frustration right now. In that conversation, and the reason why I asked that question is because multiple times you presented to this village board, this commission, and the public, and have misrepresented our statements in that meeting.
I apologize. That was my understanding. Maybe that's how I took the conversation. So I apologize.
Unless there was another conversation I wasn't a part of, I'm really confused on how you got to that. So trying to respectfully address that. Some of the loose guidelines that were outlaid is actually the elementary school that this proposal is set for faces roughly a $500,000 swing budgetarily, just based on residential school age children, rental property school age children within the inflow and outflow from July to August. So that would be a pretty adverse effect on my school district,
right,
as well as our ability to staff appropriately, as well as throughout the school year when leases come up or are canceled or terminated and we have an influx in or out within the school year, that number actually grows. So, and we're going to have a larger discussion on this tomorrow. And I hopefully this community comes to that conversation at the school district I'm going to reserve the rest of my comments for that. I will say, and just based off of what else is on this board, we have two studies out. One is the facilities use studies. That study is in, it's being finalized and will be presented on the 17th. And it's going to deal a lot with space and population in our schools. And then that second study you just mentioned will be done in April and will dovetail with that on enrollment. We're going to have that information. We're going to provide that to the public, and our goal is to provide that to the village to help form better decisions. But with this particular item that's on the agenda and the following one, as far as high density housing goes, it's going to have a very adverse effect on the school district. Many of our buildings, the preliminary numbers are showing are at, we'll use the word, it's not capacity, well, it is capacity, but it's preferred capacity for a proper educational environment for the students and the staff within those buildings.
So again,
But what I want to caution is the real impact is the more dense housing that gets put in and the more residential that does get put in is going to require a financial strain on the school district, which will in turn require the school district to ask a financial commitment from the community to support the students that this brings in. So when it's misrepresented the way you just did and have over the last month and a half, it's very frustrating. And I appreciate that we've been brought to this table. I appreciate that we've been brought to this table, and this is a relationship we've worked very hard on. Dean and myself have both been very intimately involved in pulling these two groups together to have these conversations. So when an entity outside of that relationship is misrepresenting comments made from the school district in order to ensure the furtherance of a project, it's very disheartening for us.
again, I just apologize for not maybe understand. I don't think you shared some of those data points in the call, but I clearly did not have an accurate account of our conversation, and I apologize.
What time is the meeting tomorrow, Russ?
6 p.m. at the school district office.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So Russ, are you saying that you have information that's available for use in determining the impact of this particular project?
The report should be finalized as far as the facilities use study and will be presented on the 17th to our board. So they're finalizing all the numbers and finalizing that report. I've seen some very
So you don't have that yet?
Preliminary numbers, yes. But the numbers that we are seeing are,
And that'll be presented at the March 17th meeting?
correct.
Okay.
And then the enrollment study won't be done until April. But I'm pretty sure they've been in contact with you, MD Ruffers has, in order to engage the village on that end.
I think they've reached out once.
Right, we have a meeting set or offered for April 3rd.
Yeah, so we'll have those two data points, and then actually the facilities use studies will be revisited after we have that enrollment study.
So before the results of those studies, you're sure that there's going to be a significant impact on the school district?
From the information that I've seen so far.
Okay, well, we're curious to see what they are. And
We'll talk into that further tomorrow.
absolutely. Anything else, Russ?
Not at this time, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Yes, Bill.
A question for Russ, actually. Russ, we've seen some of this kind of development in Menominee Falls. Is the relationship with the two school districts such that you can glean possible results of what's actually happened versus what was planned to happen as a result of them building the apartments they have?
As far as the effects on the school district?
I understand that you disagree, and I kind of tend to agree with you about what's proposed of a little or no impact. You respond, yes, the impact is significant. Okay, well, that's a plan. We know that, and I tend to support you. But at the same time, is there any way to go back to a school district like Menominee Falls that's already gone into this thing where they've approved a lot of high-density apartment structures in town? How has that affected the school district? Actually.
Yeah,
I think, Bill, because they had Whitestone Station and also the
Yeah, I
larger
would agree with
development
that.
on Main Street.
I would
Yeah.
look at Sussex Landon as well with all the development they've
Yeah, I
had.
don't think that I would limit it to, that was just one I just thought of, but I mean, to prove your point, not that your studies aren't correct, but you can say, hey, and in addition, here are some local examples. So I think we should
Yeah.
support you in this.
And I think that's the point, is why we're investing over almost $35,000 in these two studies to provide those accurate data points. And I've been on the record, I don't want anyone to speak in the ether of this is potentially this or that.
Right.
The point is to have a database, data-driven conversation around the impacts. Ancillarily, I could say some of the developments in the Sussex Landon area that didn't anticipate a large amount of families or families with children moving in, because that's the typical information we receive from developers when they propose these, is actually the opposite. They've seen more than what they predicted, and they're starting to see a trend of those developments, either single parent households or just households with smaller number of children, single child families, opting for that instead of the maintenance-based home ownership. And that's just from information we've seen. I'm sure we can provide more and we can
Yeah, and
reach out.
that's exactly my point, Russ. I think that your studies are fine, but bringing some actual results from another community close by would more than support your case. And taking the high road, I'm not so sure the developer understands that either. So seeing some clear facts based on what we've seen locally would be very helpful, I think.
Yeah, and I believe that that's the point of the research and study aspect that the school
Good.
district's taken.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioners, any other?
Just a follow-up.
Yep.
Russ, do your studies, one or both of them, address the issue you raised earlier? You talked about a $500,000 impact from something related to multifamily development. Do your studies
So
flesh that out and explain
I
what
mean,
that is?
that is based off of what's currently happening in that neighborhood with the current makeup of residents.
With the
So
current
is
apartments,
that
and
plan-
families that are
Yeah,
there.
so typically what we see is an ebb and flow for the apartment cycle is in July to August. Rent is either coming, right, the leases are up or starting, and we have in and out movement then. However, that's past our peak hiring season and our staff planning season, right? So
I don't know. I don't know when people's leases expire.
I'm telling you that's the pattern we're seeing. And our superintendent will speak a little bit more about that tomorrow. But what that forces us to do is either go back to the hiring pool that has now been picked over, and it makes it difficult to find the best qualified teachers to put in front of our students, and or it hurts us in retention because we could have a plus or minus year to year and we see staff getting cut year to year. How do we expect them to stay and retain in our district? That's a stress that's real for our employees on top of our students. Is that kind of outline where you could see that expense come? 'Cause
I was just curious
if students move in that last month, that would incur a 5 FTE. And that's a teacher, right? And a compensation package for each one of those teachers is near, call it $100,000. And these are very basic round numbers. I'm not giving you a specific on it, right? That we see a $500,000 swing there.
When you say right, you're asking me a question. I don't know the answer.
I'm seeing if you're tracking and understanding what I'm saying. So if I have to hire 5 teachers at the last minute before school starts at the cost of $500,000 for my school district, that's a difficult thing to plan, considering we started planning 8 months ago for that school to budget.
But it could swing the other way also, is what you're saying. You're calling it a $500,000 swing both ways over center?
It can plus or minus. But on the minus side, it makes it difficult to retain good teachers if they're always on that last of the line, if we need them or don't need them this year.
And this happens every year.
Correct.
Within the, You'll get into it a little bit more
Yeah,
detail tomorrow.
I want to give you all the numbers, but I can't give them to you now because the study isn't handed to me and officially stamped, this is the study. I've seen some preliminary numbers today and throughout this week, and we know we're getting the final on the 17th. And it'll show the capacity, and I think if you pay attention to that and understand that report more, then you'll understand when we discuss the findings of Roffers, how that, the MD Roffers report, how that plays into our capacity, our facilities use capacity. And that's huge. And there's not, and I was shocked actually today to find out there's not as much flexibility in our 4 elementary schools as we initially thought. We believed we had 2 schools that were highly impacted, being our County Line and Mac, southeastern end of the district. And we thought we had 2 schools that had some good room that we could potentially move boundaries. I think we've talked to the administration about that as well. And we're finding only one of those schools really has that room. And we're already looking at a development proposal outside of the village that would affect Amy Bell.
So these 2 studies that you're having done, you expect them to be drastically different than past studies that you've had done?
We're expecting them to be as comprehensive as we've had and as accurate as we have because they're recent. Yes, they'll be the most accurate information we could give the village to direct how village decisions will impact school district needs.
I've never seen the previous studies, so I don't know how they compare.
And why this year we're taking it to the time to do all the strategic planning in my first year as the president of the board is exactly that, because no one has.
Right. There hasn't been any studies done in the past.
Correct. So we're doing it now as a partnership, right, to provide that information and to better strategically plan for our district needs.
Right. No, I know when we were doing the 2050 plan, we asked for that information and it was never provided because there wasn't any.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
So
Good.
we're in a different direction now. Thank you.
Good. Well, I look forward to it. Any other questions in regards to this new business item B? No other questions? Then we can go to, and thank you for presenters for the information and for your time. To new business item C, Village Germantown Community Development Department and Village Administrator, discussion of land exchange proposal between the Village of Germantown and Blackstone Creek LLC, Hymac Group, Blackstone Golf Course property, again on tonight's agenda for discussion only. Jeffrey, starting out this one as well, or is Administrator Krecklow?
I'll take this one.
All right, then I'll turn the meeting over to Administrator Krecklow.
Steve, you want to give us just a second?
All right, there. Well, while Jeff is pulling up the slides, let me just give a little bit of an introduction here. And again, this is an item that is for discussion purposes only. This is a proposal that I'm going to be presenting some information regarding a proposal that the village received about 2 months ago, maybe going on 3 months ago now, from the Hymac Group, which is the owner of Blackstone Golf Course. A proposal to consider a land exchange between the village and the golf course. When we received that proposal, we presented it to the village board and asked for some direction of whether or not it was something that the village was interested in considering. And the direction from the village board to staff was to have some additional conversations, both with the Park and Rec Commission as well as the Plan Commission. So I will be kind of walking through what the proposal is and just looking to answer any questions you might have. First of all, the communication is to the Plan Commission to inform you of what's going on out there, but then also to receive your feedback, questions, concerns that I can relay to the village board. So first of all, we have on the screen a map here of Blackstone Golf Course. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, almost right across the street here off of Mequon Road. And just some history and background. There have been a couple of developments that have historically taken place from Blackstone Golf Course. The Blackstone subdivision on the west side that you can see there was broken off from the golf course over a decade ago now, and has developed into single-family housing. Right along Mequon Road, a little bit more recently, a portion of the golf course was broken off for Fairway Knolls Retirement Home, which was constructed, I believe it was completed in 2017 or 2018. I'll give a little bit of, first of all, did I skip a slide here? I thought, well, you know what, let me take this one first and just kind of walk through what the proposal is from Blackstone Golf Course. First of all, you see outlined here in blue is the property that's currently owned by the golf course. And then there are a couple of parcels nearby that are owned by the village. Right along Main Street, we have the what's commonly known as the recycling center. It's the old village sewage treatment plant, which has been historically used for the collection and composting of yard waste. That yard waste facility is now closed. There are some compost piles there that are continuing processing, but that will likely be completely abandoned within the next year or so. And then further to the east along Main Street, you'll see a red rectangle, and that is some part of Hauptstrasse Park. It's the area that currently includes pickleball courts and a skateboard facility that is in relatively rough shape. The proposal from the Heimat Group would be to turn over to village ownership of the area highlighted in red here, which is the bulk of the golf course. And the Heimat Group would retain the area in blue that is on the southeast corner, and they would be submitting a separate residential development proposal for that area. And they would receive then from the village, those two red areas, which are now on this map shown in blue, would be combined with some property that they already own on the golf course and would allow for some residential development along Main Street. Now, next I want to go back to this particular slide. Some of the questions that came up initially when the proposal was brought forward were related to the usefulness of the land that was being proposed to be transferred to the village. This map shows the floodplains and wetlands, and I'm sure that any of you who golf Blackstone Golf Course know that there are some floodplains that especially during the spring season, do occasionally get some flooding involved. And on the far north side of the property along the railroad tracks, there are some wetlands. One of the things that I discussed with the Park and Rec Commission when we had this conversation with them was that floodplains are, for park purposes, can be very useful. If you notice when you go to other communities and you see parks along rivers, very often those parks along rivers are in the floodplain. And there are, as you're all well aware as plan commissioners, there are a number of things that can be done on floodplains, including, athletic fields, picnic areas, playgrounds, even some structures for picnic shelters could be constructed within the floodplain. You're just limited as far as things like habitable buildings. So there are a number of things that could be done within that floodplain. This park concept, and you may also recall, those of you who've been on the Plan Commission for a longer period of time, that this is not the first time that this concept has come up. There have been several times in the past where previous owners of the golf course had submitted proposals to the village and looked at different development projects. So one of the questions that Park and Rec Commission in particular had was what kind of purposes could this land be used for parks? This is a representation that comes from one of the previous proposals from, I believe it was 2019, and was developed by a planning firm that works on putting together parks master plans as kind of an initial draft on what could all be done in this area as from a conceptual perspective. And you can see there they had lit out some a disc golf course, some athletic fields, playground area, and I think access to the river, which was, we did have some community open houses to further discuss this, and that was one of the areas that residents expressed a particular interest with, was getting access to the river and being able to canoe, kayak, that type of thing. This is a more recent conceptual design that was actually prepared pro bono by Trustee Baum that just, again, gives some examples and I think is a good graphic to show what is potentially doable here on this parcel. If you look, first of all, on the west side of the area that would transfer over to the village, you'll see some crosshatched green area, and that is area that is not in the floodplain and is buildable with any number of purposes. Could be restroom facilities, pavilions, again, also picnic areas, playgrounds that would be a little bit higher ground and a little bit drier. And those might fit in well with the proximity to Blackstone Creek subdivision, where residents of that area might want to use those facilities and have close proximity to some of the access to park and recreational activities. Moving a little bit further to the east, you can see there is in the floodplain there some area that would be suitable for something like a disc golf course or possibly even a 9-hole golf course, but other recreational activities. And all along the river, there could be opportunities for recreational trails, biking trails, walking trails. And I should note that is an area that was specifically pointed out in the recreational trail plan that was adopted by the Park and Rec Commission and the Village Board as a desire for some additional trails connecting different areas of the village. This particular diagram also does show that there would be some fishing areas and access again for boating, kayaking. It's not really boating, it's not large enough for that, but definitely large enough for kayaking, canoeing, and that type of recreational activity on the river. There also could be an opportunity for some facilities like a splash pad. The Park and Rec Commission has been having some discussion for over a year now on the best place to locate a replacement splash pad for the one at Kinderberg Park, which is nearing the end of its useful life. And this is a potential location for that. This diagram shows a continuation of a pedestrian path from the end of Main Street across the Menominee River and then following an existing village easement through the Blackstone Creek subdivision and then connecting with River Road. I think one of the interesting ideas that comes out with that is it would provide a way for high school students after school to walk down to Main Street, access some of the Main Street's businesses. I think that's something that a lot of other communities have had some success with, and both in terms of giving high school students something to do and a place to socialize after school is over, and also supporting some of the local businesses. Along Main Street in this diagram, it shows the residential development that could take place along Main Street that would likely, if that went forward, involve some reconstruction and renovation of Main Street to make it more pedestrian and bicycle friendly and help to connect the Main Street businesses to this new park. You'll notice on the existing Hauptstrasse Park, what this concept suggests is the possibility of basically flipping the baseball diamond from the north side of the park to the south side of the park and expanding it from one baseball diamond to a second, and then replacing the pickleball courts and the skate park on the north side of the park, where it's a little bit further away from residential development. That is a source of some complaints that we get from nearby residents, the noise from the pickleball courts, as well as you know, some of the skateboard activities. And then kind of circling around back towards the southeast corner, you'll see in that purple shaded area would be the bulk of what the Highmark Group that would then be bringing forward in a separate proposal to this body for residential development. So that summarizes what is before us, I guess. Again, just want to reiterate, this is very early in the process. And just to put it in comparison to the discussion that we had about Pilgrim and Mequon, that is a proposal, an idea that's been a year long in different meetings, different community input sessions, different discussions with the village board, with the plan commission. This is just at the very start of this process. If the village board does decide to move forward and give staff direction on negotiations, any input you have would be considered as part of that, and it would be the very beginning of a long process to, you know, further develop these concepts, both in terms of what the park space would be like, and then eventually, as part of a separate process, what the development proposal would look like. So I guess with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have or take any feedback that you have.
Commissioners? Mr. Williams?
So I have two questions. One, could you talk about what the plan for use of the land that we would be exchanging would be right now? I mean, is there a use for it, or is there something we could be doing with the land? And then the second thing is, and I know it's not our responsibility to evaluate the financial aspects of a transaction, but I noticed in their exchange agreement that it's written in such a way that we're going to pay them the difference in value on the land. And when I look at this, it looks like we're giving them something that they need for something that they can't use. And so I'm just wondering about when they're saying we're gonna make up the difference in value, paying them for this exchange, whether they're, I mean, is that just a draft with an example of a draft, or is that what their expectation is?
Let me address the first part of your question first. And can I just clarify, are you talking about a plan for the land that we're receiving?
No,
That we'd be trading? They have not submitted a plan for that at this point.
What could the village use that land for if we kept it?
Oh, if we kept it, I guess for the recycling center, it would, the village could at our own expense, redevelop that for access and park space for access to the river. I do think that would be a very costly proposition. I mean, if you've seen it and you've been there, you know, it's there's a lot that would have to be done with that, and it would not be an inexpensive project. And the other component that we would be giving up would be actually the pickleball courts and the skateboard facility. So, the baseball field is not being there. We're not giving up the baseball field. That would continue to be owned by the village. Then for the second part, again, this was the very first proposal that was submitted. So it's the very beginning of the negotiation. You kind of look at it, it's sticker price on the car. We wouldn't be paying sticker price on the car. And that's a conversation that we would have with the village board. I think one of the places to start would be, and I'm leaning on back on some of the previous iterations of this proposal would be to do some appraisals of the value of the property, both in terms of what we would be giving up and what we would be receiving. But as you said, it is something that the developer is looking for. And, the village, there may be some advantages to it, but we're not the ones who are pushing this proposal at this point.
Thank you.
Ms. Hank?
Has this already been presented to Parks?
Yes.
Is it possible for us to hear what happened at that Parks meeting, what their concerns were?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There were, the result and the primary feedback was that they had a lot of questions, they had some concerns, but they thought that it had a great deal of potential and they were interested in continuing the conversation. Their concerns were about the cost of replacing the pickleball court and the skateboard park. So those were their two biggest concerns. But they did see some advantages in terms of, we would be, in terms of acreage, we would be getting much more land for park facility than we would be giving up. And they did like the idea of, for recreational purposes, giving residents access to the river.
Mr. Tepes, would you consider that accurate? Thank you.
Thank you. Those are exactly my concerns as well. The only other thing I noted in your synopsis of what could be here was you mentioned that there were some noise complaints about the pickleball and the skateboarding. Yet we'd probably like to see those back again. How would we mitigate that noise complaint in the future?
Well, if we were, and this would create an opportunity to kind of develop a new master plan for the park and start over from scratch. I think starting over from scratch, we would move those away from the residential development as far as we were able to. And it's not just this park. I get a lot of calls on a lot of different things, and this isn't by far I don't want to make it sound like this, we're inundated with phone calls about complaints with pickleball, but tennis courts, pickleball courts, we do get residents who are sensitive to the noise and bring that issue up. So I think when we're going through a park master planning process, I think, we would probably try to look to move those further away from residences.
And then my last comment is related to all of that. As we're negotiating with this developer, we should be considering the costs for master planning, replacement amenities, all of that in the negotiations. Like that's an additional cost to the village that isn't in our budgets, and we'd want those amenities likely replaced.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ewert.
My first question was answered on the village agreeing to pay the difference between the values. I think the approach that you had outlined is a little concerning. We're not looking to buy a car. We're the salesman. They need the property. They need the buildable property for that. So I would really look at it from that lens and not the other way around, especially given the impact this could have. The other is the following section of that is an exchange into mixed use, mixed housing, commercial, residential, community, generally consistent with the Village Center District guidelines. That sounds like an amazing project that we've already heard about tonight. So it's giving me a little caution on if we're looking at this Village Center project and its success rate, given its multi-year and tiered approach, and moving ahead with a similar base project in another portion of the village, are they going to be in direct competition with each other? I also have some concerns, both of them implemented potentially via TID, and now we're competing with ourselves and those TIDs financial viability.
Well, I think that the data that we have on the demand for housing shows that the market would easily absorb both of these developments should they occur. Obviously the developers are both aware of, this developer is aware of the proposal for Pilgrim and Mequon and is still looking at bringing it forward. you know, they could easily be complementary to one another in terms of creating a little bit more of a destination for the village center of Germantown. And sometimes that, you know, that density and then attracting restaurants and making it a destination results in, you know, in further demand as well. So I think based on the current data we have, and then, you know, looking at the developer interest, I think that it is, that there is the ability to absorb both of the residential developments. As far as a tax increment district, I think it's way too early to determine whether or not a tax increment district is necessary or would be desirable. I know that language for that was included in the developer's initial proposal. I think that's pretty common because oftentimes municipalities will use tax increment districts for developments like this to pay for amenities that communities want. And that would be an option here as well, if that is what the community wants.
Impact fees too.
And then,
I'm sorry, the other thing I can mention related to that is impact fees. And that holds true for the previous project that we heard about. You know, the village is now up to, is it $8,000 or $9,000?
80, I just put it at 8,500.
About $8,500 per residential unit in impact fees that go towards things like parks and recreational facilities, are the new public safety building that we need to construct, expansion of the library, as well as our sewer and water facilities and recreational trails.
Since you brought up impact fees, are any impact fees currently going to the school district, or is there an avenue where that's an even a possibility?
I don't believe that state statute allows for school districts to charge impact fees.
That's my
Could it be
understanding too,
redesignated
because
to
we
a school
don't.
district?
Yeah, you know, we talked about earlier in the evening about sending a resolution to the state legislature on a different topic. Personally, I think the idea of an impact fee for a school district is a great idea, and it might be something that the village board and the school board could work on jointly to try to get the state legislature to look at that.
So
I can ask the village attorney your question.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't believe the state allows it. There's only a couple ways the school district can.
I say have a.
But I don't think they disallow the village from sharing impact fees
That's
either.
true. It'd be nice to have his opinion.
Yeah, it's a broad topic, just bringing it up.
And just, I would say, I can tell you that the way the village uses impact fees is very tightly controlled under state statute. And we would not be able to use our impact fees or like turn those over to the school or use them for construction of the
I
school.
bring it up because I've heard this mentioned in public and I know there's a lot of regulation around it. So just from an optics standpoint. And then just on that, my caution is, from an optics standpoint, this prior project with the Village Center has an awful one in the community. Pros and cons to it, but a lot of the pros aren't understood correctly and a lot of the cons aren't being heard either. I'd hate to see this project as it's in the infancies of it, go down that same road and come to that same head at the end of it, where we slow play the situations at hand, and then we'll just see what comes out when we can all sit here and see where it's going and what we can expect. And we can only judge that off of past action. And the past action right now is where this Village Center project currently lays. So given it's a similar type of project, I just caution and I would hope there's some better understanding built around it in totality. And this is the first time I'm hearing. So this will be in this purple section is their theory of more residential development future. So another phase off of whatever may be happening on the north end.
Yeah, I think well, and I'm basing this, again, this has been out here. This is not a new concept. It's been out. When was the first proposal? Like 2007? The first time?
For residential?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it was around 2009 or 10.
2009 or 10, well
We
before.
were talking with MMSD and Green Seams about purchasing the golf course and turning it over to hold water upstream and then turning it over to the community for a park use.
So, but I think in all of those previous iterations, that area in the purple on the southeast side was the primary area of development. I think actually the housing on Main Street would be a secondary. It's that area on the southeast corner there. That would be the primary residential development.
Anything that's been discussed before as part of the park, there's always been a development part in the blue area. And up towards the corner, there's been several different discussions on what could happen in that corner in regards to, I've heard everything from a brewery to a funeral home. So it's always been designated as anything to do with this trade of the park or accessing a park here. There was always development in that area previously. Anything else, Russ?
No, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Trustee Baum?
Full disclosure, I drew this drawing. I did it for free.
Said that.
Nobody has I haven't charged anybody. I haven't been paid for this. I got frustrated day one when people are saying this is swampland. It's not swampland. There is some wetlands in there, yes. A lot of it is floodplain, but there is a significant amount of it that is buildable. Without a vision, I find that people don't understand anything. So I have put together a simple little vision of what could happen. It is a 20,000-foot view. We're way up here. I don't know how anything is going to be paid for. I don't care how anything is going to be paid for until we ask the first question and answer it at the village board level. Are you interested in trading this land or not? Answer that question, then we decide, do we move forward or do we walk away? Every other question, every other option that I was quoted on in the newspaper, yes, I don't need to have a plan commission meeting. I don't need to have a park and rec meeting. I don't have to analyze the cost of the land yet because I don't know if we even want to do this. Until we answer that question, everything else to me is irrelevant. Let's take a moment and see what we want to do. The contract that the developer put forward was so premature. It is the first wish list. We kind of put it on the side and said, do we want to do this or not? We'll go back to him. We'll get it analyzed. We'll get that contract rewritten if we want to move forward with this. First things first. If there are any questions about these plans, this plan here in particular, I'm happy to give you my vision, but it's only my vision. It is not this panel's. It is not the village board. It is not the developer. It is just an idea I threw on paper. So everybody else could think about it and talk about it and decide whether you want to participate or not. I'll be happy to listen to anybody. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Williams?
I'm going to go back to my earlier comment, and it's not to disagree with anything you're saying, but isn't what they're asking in exchange for value going to help us decide whether or not we want to do it? I guess, I mean, if they're throwing a cost that they're going to expect the village to pay for this land that's exorbitant, that we're not interested in, all this other stuff is moot, right? So that value that they talked about in their agreement, I think we have to know what that number is in order to decide if we're interested. And I still think we're giving them something they want for something they can't use. So it seems like the leverage is on our side, but I do go back to, I don't know if we want to do this until I know what they're asking for, what they think they're going to get in exchange for what they're giving us, and what their number is in terms of the value they expect the village to pay.
It's all part of the next discovery, I think.
And if I can just real quickly on the process, and I know that there's, you're absolutely right. That's a key question. There's a lot of other key pieces of information. From a process perspective, we put this on the next village board agenda after we receive the proposal. And because we wanted to make sure that as soon as we received this, that people were aware that staff had received a proposal, that it wasn't hidden. It wasn't, there weren't any discussions going on that the board didn't know about, or the plan commission didn't know about, or the public didn't know about. So this is about as transparent as you could possibly get. Now, it also means that when we come forward to this, there's a lot of unanswered questions. We've got to take it one step at a time if that's the direction that the policymakers give to staff.
Ms. Hank?
As the technical person on this board, I feel like it is also my responsibility to support that parks and floodplains are completely compatible. A lot of times you do see parks located near rivers because they are a great use of the land that is along those areas and allows residents to actually interact with the water and to enjoy nature. So this would be a compatible use and a compatible area for a park, even though it is floodplain.
And can you, just for people in the audience who aren't familiar with you, could you explain your experience in reference to that knowledge?
Sure, gladly. So I'm Bridget Hank. I'm a plan commissioner for the Village of Germantown, but my day job is a senior project manager for the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. I've been with the sewage district for 5 years, leading several of their mega sewer projects. So I have a lot of experience on the sewage side of things. Prior to that, I spent 3 years with the the city of Mequon as the assistant city engineer, served on their plan commission as their staff liaison. And prior to that, I had 15 years as a developer's engineer, with my specialty being stormwater management and development. So my understanding of my purpose of being on this plan commission is to take a technical look at what is coming before the commission and help to determine and share information with the public on what you're seeing from a technical perspective. So when you see things like this and you say it's swampland, it's floodplain, it is my role here to share with you whether it's a compatible use, what they're presenting makes sense. When we see developments come forward for stormwater management, that is my specialty. So taking a close look to make sure that the stormwater works how it's intended, and that the developers aren't taking us for a ride.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments in regards to new business item C? Mr. Shad, you still with us? He's on mute.
I'm having trouble with my mute button here. Yes, I am with you.
I knew it.
It's not the same as Zoom, but it is good once you know how to do it.
Sorry, Bill, could you say that again?
I said it's not the same as Zoom, but once you find it, it's fine.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Anything else to add? If not, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
That then takes us for all items under new business, which brings us then to citizen input and public appearance. Anybody that is within our audience or joining us via WebEx or would like to participate in citizen input and public appearance, you're welcome to do so at this time. All I would ask is you come to the podium and turn in a yellow slip of paper to the person that is taking notes so they have your name and address correct for the record. And also please restate it at the microphone so those in the audience know who you are, and those that are watching at home can also know who you are as well. So anyone wishing to come forward for citizen input and public appearance is welcome to do so at this time. Yes, ma'am.
All this, I wish we could at least have a couple extra seconds to talk after wanting us to spend millions of dollars, okay? This is ridiculous. I've heard enough tonight, okay? It's disgusting. Do any of you out here want to pay the $100 million? First of all, this board took a $1.7 million of our tax money and our general fund and bought the 1.2 for
Just so
Grossnick.
we're clear, this board is the plan commission, so it's not.
I understand that. We're talking the future planning. You took and you bought $1.7 million, took of our money to buy the Flower Source, plus $700,000 to do demolition work, okay? Now I'm reading an article by Tom McKillian, who's an editor, and he says now in spring, you want to spend $5 million possibly for the Ascension property, Who of us approved all this money yet? And the three people that presented this project, we're supposed to be hearing developers coming to buy the land, to plan the land, not to charge us anything. And that's what we're supposed to be hearing. And that's not happening. All you see is smoke and mirrors, and it never happens. It's discussion. And 2 weeks later, you go buy a property. None of us approved that at all. Nobody in the village I know of said you could do that. This is our money. It's your money, some of you, but some of you don't even live in Germantown. And I don't know where you're gonna, you want money for a safety building. This Hedgewick, the guy that owns the golf course, really, he sits on the Board of Review Committee, which is a voting body advancing TIDs through approval process. Boy, would I like to be on the committee to approve all the money to remodel my house, okay? This is crazy. And this is what you're being told tonight. And the plan for housing, another citizen said, okay, we have residents in Germantown who authorized the village board to become a developer, spending 10 million on properties with more purchases to come. Last year, 1.2 million on Grossnick property with no proposed actual plan other than avoiding a hypothetical parking lot. Citizens have been vocal about not wanting high density apartments. They don't want them. And we don't want TIDs either. And this is allowing phase one to be exactly that. Everything's apartment buildings. Hedgewick wants the park for what reason? He wants to build rental units so he can make a lot of money off our salaries, okay, what we're paying for it. And if you want to do it, then you got to vote for it. But I think this board has to wake up. I'm getting tired. I come here all the time and all I hear is $1 million for this, $1 million for that. Who's going to pay for this? Where are you going to get the money from, Mr. Walter? Would I like to know.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input and public appearance?
Sarah Larson, Butternut Road. I'm sorry this may be disjointed, and again, my disclaimer from the start of the meeting. I apologize, but obviously we're quite passionate about what's going to happen, and I have a high level of sarcasm, so please bear with me. To address Mr. Baum, email here. By the way, go to the Go G-Town, Go Great on Facebook. You can find the emails. I'm doing like a timeline of history there. So this email is July 8th of 2022 from Director Retzloff to Dean Wolter, Steve Krecklow, and David Baum. A little excerpt here. As far as the back northeast part of the golf course and recycling center, I believe Jim is or would be in favor of extending the park on the backside of the golf course, knowing that the extent of floodplain will restrict development. Jim seems to agree with David's concept plan for residential uptight along the west end of Main Street with park features in the back. I believe we need to come up with a solid plan for the type and extent of park features we will want and the extent of public space. So then you flash forward here to January 25th from Jim Sedgwick to Retzloff, Krecklow, and I think eventually Dean might be copied in on this, but it says here, we'll be seeking an amendment to the existing PDD, so we want to make sure for all our benefit that we start with a good understanding of what the current PDD ordinance says and discuss an appropriate path to navigate the respective village review and approval process. Because the additional layer of complexity due to the public park. This is not all coincidental as the way things go. And Bob, you asked the brilliant question about TIDs. And what you should be looking at is on the Ehlers plan, did you notice that the TID boundary is to the north and west side of the Pilgrim Road intersection? Why might that be? so that you can extend the TID because you need adjacent property to extend a TID. You can go to Grossnick, down Main Street to Blackstone. So it won't be 2 TIDs. We're just going to make 1 jumbo TID out of this. And, you know, I think Bailey says, oh, this has been in the works for some time now. Well, sure as hell has, behind the scenes, behind the closed doors. You know, Mr. Kreklow says, oh, this has been a year-long process with the Village Center. I believe the first visioning session to the public was in November, and the second was in January. That isn't a year-long process. And the sham of the 2050 plan of only 45 people providing input, this is all ridiculous. And I encourage you to do research. I know this stuff is tedious, but people need to wake up. And at least on the plus side, I like to leave on an optimistic note. With the simple majority, that just means we have fewer trustees we have to replace next year. Thanks.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? Anyone else for citizen input or public appearance?
Way. Okay. Melanie Smythe, N140W17938, Cedar Lane. Okay, so in the letter about the Heimat Blackstone property from January, it was talking about 350 to 425 apartments. So I don't know if you had a chance to read that letter, Russ. I think the timing of these 2 proposals, while they might have good things to consider, they're just doing them at the same time just seems like bad planning. It sounds like it's going to be a problem for the school district, potentially. It's also definitely going to be a problem for managing the money that we don't have, especially considering when there's a 5-year plan for around $200 million worth of public works projects that need to be taken care of, not to mention some of the other things that came up this evening. So while these may all be nice things to do, I don't know that we can pull them off, and certainly not with additional TIDs. I've already said previously that I believe the 2050 plan was incomplete, that no neighborhood meetings were done. And to me, what was done with this village center is only about 1/3 of the way done. I think that we should be able to review a design that we want, that we provide to developers for them to react to, not for us to say, oh, color in between these lines and maybe we'll get something that we want. I do know that not all of the comments from residents were incorporated because none of the drawings were changed. I mean, one of the things I wrote down on a paper sheet was do not use that font. We've had people from Germany come over here and be kind of offended because that's associated with Nazi Germany. And that was not picked up. And I wrote that in one of the comments, and there it is on the Marketplatz. Also, the marketplace remains too small. It's still only 150 feet. I think I think that those perspectives are lovely, but they're deceptive. It's not as big as those perspectives make you think. Let's see. And to your comment, President Walter, you know, that we've been told that this village center is the soul of Germantown. So it should not be a cookie cutter thing that just suddenly appears somewhere else as well. So those are my remarks.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input?
Scott Heffley, Old Farm Road, just a couple of comments. An earlier person before me said in 2019, the vote of the people in Germantown that inputted was 71% disagreed with multifamily, okay? So maybe things change, maybe they don't. Here's something that President Walter knows 3 or 4 other presidents of this village that I've talked to know, people that were on the board many years ago that I talked to know, this village has never done a TID for residential. And yet here we are considering one, because everything they've talked about for the village center, for that high density housing regards it, there's a TID involved, right? The secret's out of the bag. I know early on, it was too early when my own trustee, Mr. Baum, said, we're not talking about TIDs, you know, who said anything about that? Clearly, we're on the path to a TID. This village has never done a TID for residential ever. Before you got here, before I got here, before he got here, we've never done one. Now we're saying that we have to do one. Why is that? Because it's the only way to get it done. Because we're dangling it out there for developers. Heck, if I was a developer, I'd come in. If you're going to give me a TID, holy cow, man, I can get a bunch of stuff done, make a bunch of money. So that's why 15 developers are interested. If you didn't have a TID for them and you didn't dangle that out in front of them, you're not having 15 developers willing to come here, put up their own money to build something they think might or might not work. So keep that in mind as you go through this. And I know those two up there will disagree with me. They frequently do, but never did a TID before in the history of this village, 60-some years, for residential. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Anyone else wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? Hi, Judy. How are you?
My name is Judy Rogers, and I live on the corner of Old Farm and Wagon Trail. I built my house in 1978, so I've seen a lot of change in Germantown. Lots been good. Did consider leaving at one time because when I built, it was a subdivision that was surrounded by farmers' fields and openness. And that's what appealed to me. We did have close shopping on Mequon Road, and that was good. What kept me there, though, is I'm a block, besides my great neighbors, is I'm a block away from a park and 5 blocks away from Wetland Nursery, which is a nice open space. Okay? I didn't see that with this. I saw more concrete. I saw more glass. I saw more asphalt. I don't understand the appeal of that. Also, traffic study. Was a traffic study done? You're talking about 446 units. Some with 1 car, some probably with 2 cars on that intersection, which is already a busy intersection. Okay, so I'd like to see more about that. The cost of this, I can't, I'm asleep at the wheel. I don't really understand these TIDs, but if they're like TIF districts, I know that the money goes back to pay for the infrastructure before it gets to go to the taxing units. And that's supposed to take 27 years. I'm sorry, I'll be footing a bill for this and I'll be dead before I get the money back into the tax situation here. So I would really like to see the total dollar amount that's looked to be put into this. And I'd like to see what it's going to do to our property taxes now. We just saw a big increase and we voted for it. We needed the people in the police and safety.
Yeah, a minute.
And you're talking about a new safety building, but Mr. Ewart talked about the impact on schools. You're going to need more police. You're going to have higher costs for garbage. And you're going to have more costs for public works to plow those roads. I mean, this thing is going to have a huge cost to it. And I don't think the people in Germantown know what that cost is or what it's going to mean to them. You talk about high density, you're talking about things that are going to appeal to the people that are coming into Germantown and don't appeal to the people that are already here and have lived here for many, many years. So I'm just going to ask you to please be respectful of the people that are here and our tax dollars, and please get this out to the public because I was unaware of this until just recently. And I'm looking for that information so I can go back to my neighbors and I can tell them because they don't know about it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input? Yes, sir.
Sorry, getting old sucks. Okay, I have just a couple questions. Okay, first of all, as far as the swap for the land, I'll give you a Tommy Harper baseball card for a Babe Ruth autographed baseball. That's not much of a swap, is it? So if we have to pay for the land we're swapping with them, that's not a swap. Second of all, as far as the project for Mequon and Pilgrim Road goes, I'm not against development. You guys just did your due diligence. You did what you were asked to do. You guys are here to plan when something comes before the village, to plan and ask the questions. And I'm wondering if the questions were asked. Proper questions is, they're asking for federal or state funding. That comes with a price tag, and that price tag is subsidized housing or availability for subsidized housing and how much of that is going to be involved in this project. Also, what's the price of these apartments going to be? They have to have an idea of what they're going for based on market of all the other jobs and businesses and businesses that they've done. There didn't seem to be enough parking spots to be used by a majority of the community. Most of the parking spots were for the apartments, and most of it was walking space. Well, people that live down on the other side of town aren't going to walk there. If they're going to go there, they're going to need a place to park. And it didn't seem that there were enough parking spots. And it's also on the map, it looked like there were 5 ways in, but no ways out, no way out. All the arrows were going into the development, nothing was coming out. Is this a twilight zone? I know I'm being sarcastic, I'm sorry. Okay, and also they meant, it sounded like the developer and we're gonna control what retail comes into this business, into the location. Are they gonna be controlling the retail, or is the village gonna be able to decide what retail they want in there? I mean, it's something where these questions asked. You know, if they weren't asked, that's why we're mad. You guys are doing your job and we appreciate it. We understand it. We don't always agree, but that's why you're here, to ask those questions. All right. And the only dumb question is the one you don't ask. And these things should have been asked. Okay. The property behind it, there's creeks running through it. Does the DNR have to get involved with any of that stuff in any of these developments? Because that's still wetland, and wetlands are controlled by the state. Okay, did anybody ask those questions? You have to think about every little thing to get the answers that need to get, so that we are given all the information we need to decide if we want this or not. And then we give that information to you, and then you vote according to what we elected you to do for the elected officials. Now, we do, the elected board members, we do elect you, and there are certain things we trust that you're going to do. It's getting harder and harder for us to do that. So please, do your due diligence, do your job, and help us out so we're not always going through this baloney.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
So much more information we didn't know about. Tammy Schneider, West 204, North 9699, Lannon Road. I haven't attended very many of the Plan Commission meetings, but I found this one very informative. It's great timing to be here when they talked about 2 more developments. I would like to thank Commissioners Bob, Bridget, and Russ for your information, your good questions, and your concerns. So thank you. With Russ's information about the school board, in particular to the village center, which looks like about 404 units, I'm wondering what they are planning with this possible Blackstone plus the 284 units that they're talking about at the Lannon Gateway. So please make sure that they're figuring for all of those things. With the village center, the presenter said that if they build the housing, then they will get people there who will work as employees in the second phase retail shops. I'm pretty sure that the people who are going to be renting those apartments will already have jobs and not being applying at those retail places. And looking back at the citizen surveys, The citizens say that 85% say we need more sit-down restaurants and family restaurants, and 61% say we need entertainment and attractions. So if that's what the survey respondents want, why not build the retail area first? Is it maybe because that we're still worried about the bank and the gas station at that corner? That's where the retail area is going to go. Is that bank and gas station ever going to leave? If we bring in additional housing, that's going to give them more customers. They'll be making more money. They probably won't leave. Then this whole plan for the village center is a farce, and you've just got your housing. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? Anyone else? If there's no one else, that takes care of all items on tonight's agenda. Do we have any announcements we'd like to make? Yes.
Just a reminder for the meeting tomorrow. I believe Steve and Dean are going to join us at the table for that at the school district, 6 p.m. And it's regarding development in general, not just specific to the village center. And I appreciate them joining us for that conversation as we continue our partnership moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Yes, Mr. Retzlaff.
I've got a couple announcements. One we briefly touched on earlier this evening. At their meeting on February 27th, the Board of Zoning Appeals overturned the Plan Commission's decision to deny the site plan certified survey map for the solar energy project. The Board of Zoning Appeals, in overturning that decision, effectively approved the project, subject to the staff recommended conditions that were attached to the site plan approval. So we will be proceeding with that development review as the plans are further finalized and the project moves forward. The second item I wanted to bring to your attention, because I've gotten a lot of questions about this, the Crew Car Wash that we approved about a year ago in April of 2024, the developer, the owner, is intending to move that project forward. And they will likely be bringing to the Plan Commission a request to extend their site plan approval a short period of time. You have the ability to approve it up to an additional year, but that's going to be coming in soon and probably will be on the Plan Commission agenda in April.
That was off County Line Road, correct?
Yes, the County Line Road BP Mobile. BP station, yes, redevelopment of that site to a crew car wash.
Okay, great. All right, any other announcements? If not, before we adjourn, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for all your input. And if you have any questions, reach out to your representatives. Have a good night. Thank you for watching and happy spring.